Chapter 964. Bam! 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 Tens of thousands of giant golden swords exploded with unstoppable power and hit Ji Tianqing hard. The deafening sound reverberated in the night sky and spread for hundreds of miles. The golden light fragments and the shock wave exploded and swept in all directions. Instantly, the countless towering trees in the forest within dozens of miles were smashed into pieces by the golden light shockwave. Even the dozen or so elf elders were pushed back 1,000 meters, their faces full of shock. After a long time, the violent shockwave dissipated, and the golden light in the sky gradually extinguished. The night sky returned to darkness, but Ji Tianqing was nowhere to be seen. The chief held the dark gold scepter tightly and stared at the night sky with sharp eyes. He released his spiritual consciousness to search for Ji Tianqing. The dozen or so elf elders also opened their eyes wide and searched for Ji Tianqing. Where is that human reptile? Why is he missing? Was he killed by the chief's secret technique? The chief's secret technique is destructive. That guy is only at the heaven's origin realm. He must have been blown into pieces. That can't be. Even if that guy was killed by the chief, there should be some traces left behind. Just as the crowd was full of doubts and whispering to each other, a dazzling golden light appeared behind the elders out of thin air. It was a giant golden sword that was hundreds of meters long. It exuded a destructive and earth-shattering murderous aura. The giant sword was surrounded by golden flames and condensed into the shadow of a huge white tiger. This was Ji Tianqing's secret technique, the White Tiger Sacred Sword. He transformed his body into a giant sword and unleashed an all-destroying power as he viciously slashed toward the elven elders. The elf elders sensed that something was wrong. Their faces changed dramatically, and they were full of shock. They instinctively dodged, but it was too late. Bam! 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 The White Tiger Sacred Sword slashed the 5 elf elders on the spot, smashing them into pieces and turning their bodies into dregs. The golden light faded, and the huge sword disappeared. Ji Tianqing's figure appeared with a swoosh. He stood unscathed in the night sky, surrounded by a murderous aura. The other 12 elven elders and chiefs were all stunned. They looked at him in disbelief, unable to believe their eyes. You were hit by my ultimate killer move, but you're actually unharmed? How is this possible? The chieftain stared at Ji Tianqing in shock and couldn't help but let out a roar. He was at the 2nd level of the soul-tempering stage and thought that he could easily kill Ji Tianqing, a heaven origin stage cultivator. But he didn't expect that not only was Ji Tianqing not dead, but he also didn't have any injuries on his body. This was simply seeing a ghost. Only Ji Tianqing knew that he had used his Kenshin battle robe to protect himself when the golden swords came crashing down on him. While heaven and earth were in chaos, he sneaked behind the elven elders and launched a sneak attack. Back then, he was only at the 7th level of the heaven origin stage, but he wasn't even defeated by the 3rd prince, who was at the 1st level of the soul-tempering stage. Now that he was at the 9th level of the heaven origin stage, his sword heart had reached perfection. The chieftain was only at the 2nd level of the soul-tempering stage, so how could he kill him? However, he couldn't be bothered to waste his breath on the chieftain. While the chieftain was still in a daze, he used his ultimate killer move again and attacked the other elven elders. Vermilion Bird Sacred Sword. Flames burst out from his body and merged with the flames to form a huge sword that was over 100 meters long. The flames around the huge sword formed the shadow of a vermilion bird as large as a mountain. The divine vermilion bird was incomparably majestic. It extended a pair of sharp claws and unleashed a destructive might toward the elven elders. When the elven elders came back to their senses, they were so scared that they immediately fled in panic, letting out terrified screams. However, there were still 4 unlucky elven elders who didn't have time to escape and were struck by the vermilion bird sacred sword. Bam bam bam. The 4 elders were killed by the vermilion bird sacred sword on the spot, and the pieces of their corpses were burned to ashes. 9 of the dozen or so elven elders had been killed, reducing the number of elven elders by half. The remaining 8 elven elders were all scared out of their wits and ran as far away as they could. The chieftain was enraged to see this, and he let loose an earth-shattering roar. "Bastard! You damned human bastard, I'm going to tear you to shreds." The chieftain waved his dark golden staff in a frenzy and gathered the power of heaven and earth to form a domain. He was going to use his domain to suppress Ji Tianqing and battle Ji Tianqing until Ji Tianqing was killed. Suddenly, the wind and clouds began to surge. The rainbow poisonous clouds in the sky tumbled and poured down like a torrential flood, enveloping an area of 50 kilometers in radius. Violent gales swept through the air, blowing sand and pebbles into the forest within a few dozen kilometers. Towering trees were snapped and branches and leaves danced in the air. Within a radius of 50 kilometers, all the plants, trees, soil, and even the poisonous clouds in the sky were under the chieftain's control. The power of heaven and earth quickly converged to form a huge rainbow barrier of light that enveloped the entire area. Ji Tianqing hesitated for a moment upon seeing this. "The chieftain has already gone mad and wants to fight me to the death. I can't afford to be entangled with him any longer. After all, he's a powerful soul refinement cultivator with powerful secret treasures and secret techniques. It'll be very difficult for me to kill him. Shi Zhongjian is severely injured and Ku is still unconscious from the poison. I have to leave this place as soon as possible to treat their injuries." In his opinion, fighting the chieftain to the death was meaningless and a waste of time. It was definitely not as important as treating Ji Ku. In any case, he had already killed so many elves and 9 elven elders, causing the Rainbow Forest tribe to suffer heavy losses. It could be said that he had vented some of his resentment. Thinking of this, he turned around and fled without hesitation, flying towards the edge of the Rainbow Forest. The night sky in front of him was sealed off by a wall of light formed from poisonous clouds. That was the barrier of the divine spirit domain. Ji Tianqing's path was blocked, but he didn't slow down. He suddenly opened the third eye on his forehead. Thunderbolt. Following his low roar, endless thunderbolts were released from his azure blue eye. They formed a huge thunderbolt-like pillar that blasted towards the rainbow light wall. Kaboom! There was a deafening explosion, and a huge hole was blasted in the rainbow light wall. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing's figure flashed and passed through the huge hole, escaping the chieftain's divine spirit domain. The chieftain was instantly enraged. He stopped waving his scepter and stopped forming his divine spirit domain. "Bastard! Don't even think about escaping from the Rainbow Forest." He roared furiously and chased after Ji Tianqing with all his might. In order to shake him off, Ji Tianqing had no choice but to take out his sword embryo and fly towards the edge of the Rainbow Forest. Swish! Chapter 965. When Ji Tianqing arrived at the edge of the Rainbow Forest on his golden sword, he saw the little black dragon and Shi Zhongjian waiting for him in the sky. The little black dragon floated in the night sky with Shi Zhongjian standing on its back, gazing worriedly in the direction of the Rainbow Forest. When he saw Ji Tianqing dashing over, the worry in his heart instantly dissipated, and it transformed into dense pleasant surprise. He actually forgot about the injury on his left arm and raised his hands to wave at Ji Tianqing. He shouted, "Young Master Ji, you've finally come out. Wonderful, quickly come over." After waving his arm a few times, the injury on his left arm was aggravated, causing him to grimace in pain. Only then did he hurriedly lower his left arm. Whoosh! Ji Tianqing flew over like a bolt of lightning and landed on the little black dragon's back. The little black dragon did not hesitate and immediately sped off into the distance. Only when it was 30 li away from the Rainbow Forest did the tribal chief charge out of the forest and give chase, seething with killing intent. Bastard! I'll kill you!" The tribal chief furiously roared, madly brandishing his scepter as he continued to chase after the little black dragon. However, he could not close the distance between him and the little black dragon. Even if he continued chasing, he could not catch up. 15 minutes later, the tribal chief had chased for 200 li, but he still could not catch up to the little black dragon. He could only helplessly give up. He stood in the sky and gazed at the little black dragon's departing figure. He angrily cursed a few times before returning to the rainbow forest. Ji Tianqing and Shi Zhongjian were finally out of danger and could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Only now did Ji Tianqing notice that not far behind Shi Zhongjian, there was a stone block half the height of a person. It was a grayish-brown dwarf with short limbs and a muscular body. His body was covered in wounds and he was currently curled up, silently sitting on the little black dragon's back without saying a word. Ji Tianqing examined him and recognized him. He was the dwarf that had been escorted into the palace by the Beeman guards that night. He seemed to be an earth spirit. "Lion, what's going on here? Why is he here?" Ji Tianqing pointed to the dwarf and asked Shi Zhongjian. Shi Zhongjian turned to look at the dwarf and hurriedly explained, "Young Master Ji, it's like this. When we were escaping from the rainbow forest, we happened to meet this little fellow. At that time, he was being pursued by a group of Beeman guards. He was riddled with wounds and could lose his life at any moment. I feel that the elves of the rainbow forest are all despicable and vicious bastards. This little guy is very pitiful, just like us, so I." Ji Tianqing immediately understood. He nodded and said, "You saw that he was pitiful, so you saved him?" Shi Zhongjian looked at him carefully, observing his reaction. He seemed to be afraid that he would get angry, so he explained, "Young Master Ji, there's an ancient saying that saving a life is better than building a 7-storied pagoda. At that time, I was only doing it in passing and treated it as doing a good deed. If you feel that it's inconvenient to bring him along, I'll let him leave once we reach a safe place." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "Look after him first. Help him treat his wounds and communicate with him. I have to save Ku first." After saying that, he took out the seal of mountains and rivers and placed the golden seal on the little black dragon's back. With a whoosh, it entered the artifact space. In the pitch-black artifact space, Ji Ku was wrapped in a layer of ice and was lying quietly on the ground. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and dispersed the ice. He hurriedly checked on Ji Ku's injuries. Ji Ku's hands and feet were bound by spider silk ropes. She couldn't move, and her skin was dark green. The wound on her forehead had already turned black, and black poisonous blood kept flowing out. It was obvious that she had been deeply poisoned. Her breathing was very weak, and her life aura was also very weak. She was like a candle in the wind that could be extinguished at any time. Seeing that her situation was so critical, Ji Tianqing was filled with worry. His expression was solemn. Ku's current condition is too deeply poisoned. Her life is hanging by a thread. If I use normal methods to treat her wounds and remove the poison, it will take me at least a day to completely remove the poison. She will also need to recuperate for half a month before she can slowly recover her vitality. This thought flashed through his mind. After thinking for a while, he decided to try another treatment method. He untied the spider silk ropes that bound Ji Ku's hands and feet. He stretched out his right hand and pressed it on Ji Ku's forehead. "Heaven-mending pearl, I hope you won't disappoint me," he muttered silently in his heart. He activated the power of the heaven-mending pearl, and a dense sacred white light surged out of his palm. It covered Ji Ku's forehead. The sacred white light wrapped around the wound on Ji Ku's forehead and quickly removed the dirty blood and poison. Immediately after, the sacred white light surged into her body through the wound and spread throughout her body. The moment the poison in her body came into contact with the sacred white light, it was quickly dispelled and purified. The color of Ji Ku's skin quickly lightened. The dark green poison quickly dissipated, and her skin returned to its white and sparkling appearance. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing's spirit was shaken. He said with joy, "That's great. The heaven-mending pearl really didn't disappoint me. It really can remove the poison. No wonder I was not poisoned in the rainbow forest even though I was constantly corroded by the rainbow poison fog. With the heaven-mending pearl, I have a physique that is immune to all poisons." Next, he activated his power for 100 breaths of time. With the help of the heaven-mending pearl, he completely removed the poison in Ji Ku's body. After removing the poison, he slowly withdrew his right palm and activated the majestic green wood true essence. He released a dark green life force and poured it into Ji Ku's body. He had the green wood spirit body and controlled the powerful green wood power. He could treat and heal people. The rich green wood true essence enveloped Ji Ku's body, causing the wound on her forehead to quickly heal. Only a light pink scar was left. Her internal organs and meridians had also been corroded by the poison and suffered heavy damage. Under the healing of the green wood true essence, the injuries on her internal organs and meridians were quickly healing. Her cultivation was also slowly recovering. After 15 minutes, Ji Ku's injuries stabilized. She was fine for the time being. She was sleeping peacefully, and her breathing and life aura were very stable and normal. Ji Tianqing was relieved and left the artifact space. Swoosh! He returned to the little black dragon's back and put away the seal of mountains and rivers. At this time, Shi Zhongjian was treating the dwarf's injuries and talking in a low voice. Ji Tianqing walked over and asked Shi Zhongjian, "Lion, how's the situation? Did you find out his identity and origin?" Shi Zhongjian raised his head and looked at him with excitement. His eyes were bright as he said, "Young Master Ji, our luck is really too good. Do you know who this little guy is?" "Who?" Ji Tianqing frowned slightly and was a little puzzled. Shi Zhongjian said excitedly, "His name is Ai Luo. He's the prince of the earth spirit race." "The prince of the earth spirit race?" Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and said with a sudden realization, "He really is the earth spirit race. No wonder those elves wanted to capture him." Shi Zhongjian added in an agitated tone, "Young Master Ji, isn't our third objective going to Carefree Mountain? The elves living on Carefree Mountain are the earth spirit race." Chapter 966. The legendary Mount Carefree appeared and disappeared from time to time. It would often move and change its position constantly. No one knew why a huge mountain would move on its own, running around like an animal. Ji Tianqing made Mount Carefree their final destination not only because it was the furthest away. There was another important reason. Mount Carefree was too mysterious and difficult to find. It would definitely take a lot of time and effort to find it. Now, the dwarf Shi Zhongjian saved turned out to be the prince of the earth spirit race, Arrow. And the elf living on Mount Carefree was actually the earth spirit race. This was definitely a pleasant surprise for Ji Tianqing. He hurriedly asked Shi Zhongjian, "Lion, did you tell Arrow about our goal?" "Of course I did." Shi Zhongjian nodded and said with a smile, "I told Ai Luo that we're looking for Carefree Mountain because we want to investigate something. We have no ill intentions and will definitely not harm the earth spirit race." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and continued asking, "What did Arrow say? Did he agree?" "Of course he agreed." Shi Zhongjian smiled. "He was very grateful for my saving his life and said that he would take us to the earth spirit race to thank us properly." Ji Tianqing also revealed a gratified smile and said, "Very good. Then you take good care of him and have him show the way to the little black dragon. We will immediately rush to Mount Carefree. Also, he trusts and is grateful to you. You should communicate with him more and ask about the grudge between the earth spirit race and the rainbow forest. Also, you can ask him about Mount Carefree." Shi Zhongjian naturally nodded in agreement and hurriedly started to communicate with Arrow. However, after exchanging a few words with AI Luo, he looked at Ji Tianqing worriedly and asked for help. Young Master Ji, AI Luo is severely injured. I don't know any medical skills, so I can't save him. Moreover, he has been poisoned by the rainbow forest and is in mortal danger. Ji Tianqing nodded and walked in front of Arrow. He said sincerely, Arrow, I can help you get rid of the poison and heal your injuries, but you must trust me and cooperate. Arrow was a shy and quiet little boy. Although he could understand the human language, he rarely spoke. He stared at Ji Tianqing for a while, then nodded and said in a very small voice, Thank you. Ji Tianqing revealed a faint smile and didn't say anything else. He reached out his right hand and held onto his arm, silently urging the power of the heaven-mending orb. Instantly, a dense holy white light surged out of his palm and covered Arrow's arm. The flesh around the wound had long been corroded into a dark purple color by the strong poison, and black poisonous blood was still flowing out. Under the purification of the holy white light, the dark purple color quickly dissipated, and the poison was quickly purified. Then, the white light entered Arrow's body through the wound and flowed through his blood and meridians. As long as the poison in AI Luo's body came into contact with the white light of the heaven-mending pearl, it was quickly purified. Taking this opportunity, Ji Tianqing used his spiritual sense to check on AI Luo's condition. AI Luo looked like a block of stone. He was honest and sturdy, and his skin was grayish-brown like a rock. In fact, when AI Luo let down his guard, his body, meridians, and blood were very soft, very similar to that of a human. It was just that the structure of his meridians was rather strange and completely different from that of a human. Moreover, his flesh and bones contained powerful earth and metal elements, which gave him a violent strength and a powerful defense. When AI Luo was nervous and on guard, or when he was fighting, the muscles and skin all over his body would become as hard as rock. The earth spirit race seems to be very close to the earth, rocks, and metal. They are good at borrowing the power of the earth. They are like the elves of the rainbow forest. They are rare elves, but they are more honest and kind. Ji Tianqing thought silently. He was filled with anticipation for the earth spirit race and carefree mountain. Not long after, he helped AI Luo cleanse the poison in his body. As expected, AI Luo felt much more relaxed, and his spirit also recovered. He then used his greenwood true essence and shot out a majestic dark green light into AI Luo's body, helping him heal his injuries. 15 minutes later, AI Luo's injuries were temporarily no longer a problem, and Ji Tianqing finished healing his injuries. AI Luo gave him a friendly smile. He knelt on one knee, put his palms together, and saluted him. Thank you for saving me, sir. AI Luo can't thank you enough. Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. He reached out to help AI Luo up and started chatting with him. AI Luo, how did you get captured by the elves of the rainbow forest? What grudge does the earth spirit race have with them? When the elves of the rainbow forest were mentioned, AI Luo's expression became a little angry. He said in a hateful tone, they are the spirit insects race, evil bastards. The earth spirit race and the spirit insects race have been enemies since thousands of years ago. They have always wanted to destroy our home, steal our wealth, and turn us into slaves to forge armor and weapons for them. Our two races have always been at war with each other. 3 days ago, I brought my guards to get wine near the wine pond. We were brewing our favorite flower cloud wine there, but the despicable spirit insects race ambushed us. They killed my guards and captured me back to the rainbow forest. They wanted to use me as a hostage in exchange for the armor and weapons they wanted. God bless me, I was lucky to have met you. You destroyed their palace and prison, so I was able to take the opportunity to escape and was rescued by you. Ji Tianqing and AI Luo talked for a long time and asked many questions. After an hour of conversation, he gradually learned about the grudge between the Earth Spirit race and the Rainbow Forest, as well as some information about Carefree Mountain. As it turned out, there were 3 great spirit races living in the southern wasteland marsh: the Earth Spirit race, the Spirit Insects race, and the Heaven Spirit race. The outside world called them the Elves. The Earth Spirit race lived in Carefree Mountain. They could borrow the power of the earth and metal. They were skilled at moving mountains and digging holes. They could go deep underground and explore all kinds of metal veins. They were skilled at using earth core fire and lava to forge armor and weapons. They loved to drink wine brewed from flowers and trees. They were simple, kind, and honest. They hated deceit and schemes the most. The Spirit Insects race lived in the Rainbow Forest. They were mainly bee-men and butterflyers. They were cunning and treacherous. They were skilled at borrowing the power of flowers and trees, and they were skilled at poisoning. However, it was very difficult for them to forge armor and weapons. They had to trade with the Earth Spirit race if they wanted to obtain weapons and equipment. The Spirit Insects race was sinister and despicable. They had schemed against the Earth Spirit race many times and finally angered the Earth Spirit race. The conflict between the 2 races became more and more intense. In the end, it became a feud. The Spirit Insects race's goal had always been to defeat the Earth Spirit race and enslave them as their slaves. As for the 3rd Heaven Spirit race, it was mainly the Birdmen race in the sky. Chapter 967. Ji Tianqing chatted with AI Luo for an hour. He benefited a lot and obtained a lot of useful information. Apart from the 3 elven races, he also learned a few things about Carefree Mountain. According to Arrow, 1,000 years ago, the Earth Spirit race did not have a fixed residence. They lived in the Earth's core, living in the caves and lava. 1,000 years ago, the Earth Spirit race discovered a divine mountain that was thousands of meters tall and settled down there. The outside world viewed them as carefree little elves, so they called that divine mountain Carefree Mountain. When he heard this, Ji Tianqing asked Arrow what was so special about that divine mountain. Why was it called a divine mountain? Arrow frowned and pondered for a long time, but he could not give a clear answer. After all, this was the decision of the Earth Spirit race's ancestor, and he did not know the reason. He only knew that he had lived on the divine mountain since he was young. Whenever the Earth Spirit race was attacked by the Spirit Insects, or when they finished gathering all the resources in the surrounding 10,000 kilometers, the Earth Spirit race would move the divine mountain to another location. When Ji Tianqing heard this, he understood why the divine mountain would appear and disappear from time to time and why it would constantly change locations. However, Arrow did not explain how the Earth Spirit race moved the divine mountain. After all, this was a secret of the Earth Spirit race that could not be told to outsiders. Unknowingly, 10 hours passed by very quickly, and it was already afternoon. The little black dragon had already flown 10,000 kilometers away from the Rainbow Forest. Ji Tianqing remembered Shi Zhongjian's map. According to the map, they were still tens of thousands of kilometers away from Carefree Mountain. However, Arrow told him and Shi Zhongjian that they would arrive at the Divine Mountain after crossing that mountain range. This news caused Ji Tianqing and Shi Zhongjian's spirits to rise. Their eyes were filled with anticipation. Whoosh! The little black dragon flew through the sky like a bolt of lightning, crossing over an undulating mountain range and arriving in the air above the mountains. Even though they were still dozens of miles away, everyone could clearly see that there was a towering mountain that was thousands of feet tall among the mountains in front of them. That was the divine mountain of the Earth Spirit race. When Ji Tianqing saw the sacred mountain for the first time, he furrowed his brows. His eyes flashed with astonishment. For a moment, he thought he was looking at the heavenly sword steel in Kenshin's tomb. It was because the divine mountain was similar to the heavenspan sword steel. Its outer appearance was like an enormous sword that was pitch black like ink, and it emitted an icy cold and desolate aura. Although he was tens of miles away, he could still feel the majestic and ancient aura of the sacred mountain. Just as he was sizing up the divine mountain in astonishment, the voice of the burial of heaven suddenly rang out in his mind. This is the place. It's that mountain. Burial of heaven's voice was as old and distant as ever, but it was filled with joy and excitement, to the point that his voice was trembling. All this time, burial of heaven had been as steady as a mountain and as cold as ice. It had never lost its composure. It was like a deity overlooking the world, coldly observing everything from the sidelines. However, its voice rang out in Ji Tianqing's mind. Ji Tianqing could clearly sense the emotions contained in that voice. It was like a father finally finding his long-lost child. He could also understand the complex feelings of the burial of heaven when it finally found its broken body after 1,000 years. Of course, he also understood what this meant. He became excited as he asked in pleasant surprise, "Burial of heaven, could it be that the divine sword is on that divine mountain?" Burial of heaven replied in a deep and vigorous voice, "Yes. I understand." Ji Tianqing said no more. He stared at the distant divine mountain, his eyes surging with a dense light. Very quickly, the little black dragon carried the group to the divine mountain and landed at its base. Ji Tianqing and Shi Zhongjian examined the divine mountain at close range, their eyes filled with amazement. They saw that this divine mountain, which was 10,000 feet tall, was like a giant pitch-black sword. There was a dense forest at the base of the mountain, a verdant scene of dark green. The mountain walls were straight and precipitous. There were no paths or steps, so it was impossible to walk or climb. However, there were many caves carved into the nearly vertical cliffs. Every cave was pitch black and led to the interior of the mountain, where the common people of the earth spirit race lived. Rows of caves were densely packed like honeycombs, distributed all over the divine mountain. Ji Tianqing guessed that from the outside, these caves did not seem to be connected. However, inside the mountain, the caves were definitely connected. In fact, not only were there many passages inside the caves, there were definitely even larger caves, similar to halls and plazas. Before the earth spirit race discovered the divine mountain, they lived in the depths of the mountain and underground. They were the best at digging holes and building underground cities. After they settled down in the divine mountain, they turned it into their home, like a giant castle. He hurriedly released his spiritual sense toward the divine mountain, wanting to investigate the situation inside. However, his spiritual sense was reflected the moment it came into contact with the divine mountain. An extremely powerful, boundless, and formless energy enveloped the entire divine mountain. Ji Tianqing's face instantly paled, and his consciousness became blurry and dizzy. He furrowed his brows in shock, thinking to himself, such a powerful and mysterious energy, and its aura is actually somewhat similar to the burial of heaven. Could this be the power of the broken sword? That broken sword from 1,000 years ago fell into this mountain and protected it? At this moment, Arrow waved at him and Shi Zhongjian, smiling as he said, "Esteemed guests, please follow me into the divine mountain to pay a visit to my father." After saying that, he led Ji Tianqing and Shi Zhongjian into the divine mountain. Ji Tianqing put the little black dragon back into the pouch and followed Arrow to the foot of the mountain, arriving in front of a pitch-black cave. Arrow pressed his palm against the wall of the divine mountain, silently circulating his energy. Immediately, the large formation that sealed the entrance of the cave was opened, and a dark passage appeared in the cave. Arrow stepped into the cave first, leading the two into the depths of the passage. Along the way, there were Earth Spirit race guards on both sides of the passage. These guards' figures and appearances were very similar to Arrow's. They were all sturdy dwarves, and they were as heavy as stone. They wore black metal armor and carried swords and scimitars. Some of the guards even used hammers as their weapons. They looked extremely valiant. Not long after, the three of them reached the end of the passage and entered a stone room that was 2 meters wide. The floor of the stone room was engraved with formation patterns, and the walls were also engraved with ancient patterns and symbols. There was also a palm-sized black metal button. Arrow slapped the black metal button, and the stone door of the stone room immediately closed. Then, the formation on the ground lit up, and the entire stone room was quickly lifted up by the formation's power. Chapter 968. Whoosh! The stone door to the stone room opened. Ji Tianqing and Shi Zhongjian followed Arrow out of the stone room. Outside the door was a wide passageway. Dozens of armored earth spirit guards stood on both sides of the passageway. When Ai Luo led the two of them through the passage, the guards bowed to them respectfully. At the end of the passageway was a huge brown stone door. Two gods were carved on the stone door. The door frame was carved with images of earth core fire and surging lava. It looked ancient and mysterious. Behind the stone door was the royal palace of the earth spirit race. Ji Tianqing and Shi Zhongjian followed Ai Luo through the giant stone door and entered a spacious hall. The floor of the hall was dark gold. The walls were inlaid with colorful gems and pearls, making the entire hall look very grand. 36 silver-armored guards stood on both sides of the hall. There was a wide throne at the head of the hall. Two earth spirit experts were sitting on thrones that were made of pure gold and inlaid with precious stones. On the left was a middle-aged earth spirit man. He had a sturdy body and long brown hair that was tied into 18 small braids. He also had a full beard that was tied into dozens of small braids. Both his hair and beard were tied up with pure gold headbands. There were also many golden rings inlaid with gems. Although he wasn't wearing a crown, he held a dark gold, mysterious, and ancient hammer in his hand. Although the hammer looked simple and even crude, it was made of a very special material that contained ancient and powerful power. It was obviously a powerful magical treasure with extraordinary power. This middle-aged man who used the golden hammer as a scepter was the king of the earth spirit race, Arrow's father, the Gold Mountain King. The earth spirit sitting next to him was a middle-aged woman. She had a sturdy body and grayish-brown stone skin that were unique to the earth spirit race. However, she wore a gorgeous golden silk dress and a complicated and expensive jade crown. Her facial features were very distinct, and her eyes were bright. Ji Tianqing could see that Ai Luo's facial features and appearance were somewhat similar to this woman's. He knew that this woman was Arrow's mother, the queen of the earth spirit race, Ida. Arrow led Ji Tianqing and Shi Zhongjian to the center of the hall, then bowed to Jinshan King and Ida with a smile. Ai Luo pays his respects to father and mother. Ji Tianqing and Shi Zhongjian also bowed and said sincerely, "Greetings, Jinshan King and Queen Ida." The Jinshan King smiled and nodded with satisfaction. Queen Ida was even more excited. She looked at Arrow with burning eyes and said excitedly, "Arrow, my child, you have finally returned safely." As she spoke, she hurriedly got up and walked in front of Ai Luo. She pulled Ai Luo into her embrace and hugged him tightly. "Child, after you were captured by those bastards from the spiritual insects clan, your imperial mother and your imperial father were very worried. They even sent 300 elite warriors to rescue you. Thank God, you came back safe and sound. Thank God." Queen Ida was very gratified, and tears were faintly visible in her eyes. Arrow hurriedly explained, "Imperial Mother, the spiritual insects clan captured me and imprisoned me in the seven-colored forest in their palace. They wanted to use me as a hostage in exchange for Imperial Father's Gaia hammer, as well as the armor and weapons they needed. Fortunately, I met these two distinguished guests. They mistakenly entered the seven-colored forest and were also besieged by the spiritual insects clan. However, these two distinguished guests were very powerful. They turned the seven-colored forest upside down and killed many spiritual insects clan warriors and elders. I took advantage of the chaos to escape and was chased by the spiritual insects clan guards, but was rescued by them. Arrow told the Jinshan king and Ida everything that happened before. After the two heard this, they immediately showed expressions of relief. They looked gratefully at Ji Tianqing and Shi Zhongjian and bowed, "Many thanks to the two distinguished guests for saving our lives. Arrow is our only child and one of the most outstanding geniuses of our Earth spirit race. Thank you so much." Ji Tianqing and Shi Zhongjian showed a kind smile and reached out to help the Jinshan king and Ida up. Then, the two sides sat down and chatted. Ida ordered the maids to bring over exquisite pastries and wine. The wine was still fine. It was all brewed from flowers and trees. After Ji Tianqing and Shi Zhongjian drank it, they also felt that it was very delicious. But those exquisite pastries made them not know whether to laugh or cry. They found it hard to eat. This was because the pastries that the Earth spirit race loved to eat were all made of precious gems and metals. The Earth spirit race's physique was special and their teeth were very good. They could eat those gems and metals like humans eating melon seeds and dried fruits. Ji Tianqing could not do it. He politely declined these pastries and waved his hand to refuse. Shi Zhongjian was very curious. With the mentality of trying it out, he picked up a piece of tungsten gold and ruby pastry and put it in his mouth. As a result, with a few crunching sounds, his face turned pale on the spot. He spat out the pastry with a painful expression. The pastry was intact. There was not even a bite mark left behind. But his mouth was full of blood. 2 of his teeth were broken. Such a miserable and funny scene made Ji Tianqing unable to restrain his laughter. The Jinshan king, Ida, and Ai Luo's family also laughed. Everyone chatted for a while. The atmosphere became more and more harmonious. Then, the Jinshan king said to Ji Tianqing, "Young Master Ji, thank you and young Master Shi for saving us. You have done us a great favor. In order to express my gratitude, this little king will give you a gift and invite you to stay here for a few days." After saying that, the Jinshan king waved his hand. Immediately, 2 guards walked into the hall. They each carried 2 gifts and presented them to Ji Tianqing and Shi Zhongjian. Placed in front of Shi Zhongjian was an egg-sized scarlet gem. It was sparkling and translucent, and contained an incomparably violent flame energy. Placed in front of Ji Tianqing was an irregular piece of golden ore. It was the size of a fist and shone with specks of golden light. The Jinshan king introduced with a smile, "This gift for young Master Shi is an earth core fire crystal that my clan found in the depths of the earth's core. Young Master Shi can use it to cultivate and obtain the powerful earth core fire. You can also use it to refine magic treasures. This gift for young Master Ji is an ore that my clan has treasured for more than 400 years. It was also found in the depths of the earth's core by an expert of my clan. My clan is proficient in refining ores and forging weapons and armors. There is almost no ore or metal that we cannot refine. However, even after spending countless years, our clan's smelting masters were still unable to refine this ore. We don't know what this ore is made of, nor do we know how to use it. But this little king believes that this ore is definitely a priceless treasure. Young Master Ji is a genius from the middle state. Perhaps you can unravel the secret of this ore and use it reasonably." Ai Luo and Shi Zhongjian felt that something was wrong after hearing the Jinshan king's words. This was clearly an ore that could not be used. They did not know its use and value. It was even worse than the earth core fire crystal. Ai Luo was a little embarrassed. He softly persuaded the Jinshan king to change the gift. Shi Zhongjian took out the earth core fire crystal without hesitation and handed it to Ji Tianqing. He smiled and said, "Young Master Ji, let's exchange. This earth core fire crystal is for you. It will definitely help you increase your flame energy. I am more interested in new things. Give this ore to me. I will study it slowly. Shi Zhongjian was obviously afraid that Ji Tianqing would be at a disadvantage, so he wanted to exchange the gem for his ore. Ji Tianqing was touched and felt warm in his heart. But he still refused with a smile. Chapter 969. Hearing Ji Tianqing's words, everyone was stunned. The Golden Mountain King and Ida both thought that Ji Tianqing said that on purpose so that they wouldn't feel awkward. Both husband and wife looked at him gratefully. They also felt a little guilty towards him. Shi Zhongjian and Ai Luo also thought so, but Ji Tianqing accepted the dark gold ore with a smile, so they didn't say anything. Only Ji Tianqing knew that he was telling the truth. This irregular and mysterious ore was the priceless treasure that he had been looking for all this time, the stellar divine gold. When he killed Qin Zheng, the Liantian city lord, he accidentally obtained a piece of stellar divine gold. Under the guidance of the burial of heaven, he used that piece of stellar divine gold to set up the heavenly spirit heavy array, so that he could quickly refine his sword. Furthermore, the stellar divine gold was a top-grade material that could be used to reforge divine swords. Even though the earth spirit race was good at smelting and forging, they couldn't do anything about the stellar divine gold, so they could only keep it until now. Now that the Golden Mountain King gave the stellar divine gold to Ji Tianqing, he was naturally pleasantly surprised. Even if he couldn't use the stellar divine gold now, he would be able to use it to reforge divine swords under the guidance of the burial of heaven when he was strong enough in the future. This is great. I didn't expect to find the aura of the broken sword and a piece of stellar divine gold on this trip to Carefree Mountain. This is really a pleasant surprise. Ji Tianqing put the stellar divine gold into his interspatial ring and bowed to the Golden Mountain King to express his gratitude. The Golden Mountain King felt even more uneasy when he saw Ji Yunshu's face full of joy and sincere gratitude. He said, "Young Master Ji, I am very happy that you like my gift. To express my gratitude, I hope that you can stay in the Divine Mountain for a few more days. If you have any trouble or need our help, please don't hesitate to ask." Obviously, the Golden Mountain King wanted to do something to compensate him and make him feel at ease. Ai Luo hurriedly tried to persuade him, "Young Master Ji, my clan specializes in refining weapons. Why don't you let my clan's blacksmiths forge a weapon or armor for you?" The Jinshan King and Ida also had the same idea. They hurriedly smiled and nodded, "That's right, young Master Ji. You must believe in our Earth Spirit race's forging skills." Ji Tianqing shook his head and refused. He smiled and said, "Jinshan King, thank you for your kindness. But I already have my own weapons and magic treasures. I don't need to trouble you. The reason I came to the southern wasteland swamp this time and experienced many hardships was to find Carefree Mountain. Fortunately, the heavens favored us and allowed us to meet Ai Luo, allowing us to smoothly arrive at Carefree Mountain. I just want to stay in Mount Ahsoka for a few days and look around. I'm very curious about this sacred mountain." The Jinshan King thought for a moment and asked, "Young Master Ji, are you looking for something?" Ida hurriedly explained, "Young Master Ji, if you are really looking for something, you might as well tell us. We will definitely help you if we can." This. Ji Tianqing slightly frowned. He hesitated for a moment and said, "Very well. Since you are so warm and kind, I will tell you the truth. You guessed right. I came to the southern wasteland swamp this time to look for something. It is a broken sword that fell into the swamp 1,000 years ago. That broken sword is very important to me. I must find it. Now, I can be sure that the broken sword is in this sacred mountain. I hope that the Jinshan King and Queen Ida can help me fulfill my wish. I will be eternally grateful." Hearing his words, the Jinshan King and Queen Ida's complexion changed. They frowned. A broken sword from 1,000 years ago? In our sacred mountain? The husband and wife looked at each other. A strange light flashed in their eyes. The Jinshan king was silent for a moment, then nodded and said, "Very well. Young Master Ji, please rest assured. We promise to help you, so we will definitely fulfill your wish. However, this matter is very important. Please give us some time. This humble king also needs to send people to investigate and find it." Ji Tianqing nodded to express his understanding. He smiled and cupped his hands, saying, "In that case, many thanks to the Jinshan king." The Jinshan king smiled and returned the gesture, saying, "Young Master Ji, young Master Shi, you must be tired after coming from afar. This humble king knows that your customs are different from mine. You must not be used to living in a cave. This humble king has already ordered the craftsmen to build a temporary palace at the foot of the mountain for the two of you to rest and live in." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing and Shi Zhongjian showed a puzzled expression. Shi Zhongjian frowned and asked, "Aren't we going to live on the sacred mountain?" Ji Tianqing was also puzzled. He quickly waved his hand and said, "Jinshan king, there is no need to trouble the craftsmen to build a palace. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. We will live on the sacred mountain." The Jinshan king quickly shook his head and said with a solemn expression, "Alas, how can this be? This humble king has already neglected the two of you just now. How can I let the two of you suffer any more grievances? You don't need to say anything more. The guests should follow the host's wishes. Just follow this humble king's arrangements." Since the Jinshan king had already made his decision, Ji Tianqing and Shi Zhongjian could not say anything more. The two of them bowed to the Jinshan king and Queen Ida and left the palace hall. Then, the two of them were led by the guards to the stone room at the end of the passage. After the array was activated, the stone room descended from the mountain peak and landed at the foot of the mountain. The guards led the two of them out of the sacred mountain and into the forest on the left side of the sacred mountain. The lush forest was originally empty, but at this moment, a palace had appeared out of thin air. The two-story palace was built with brown rocks, and it looked very solemn and dignified. The palace was not big, but there were more than 20 rooms on the 2 floors. The decorations and furnishings inside were also very complete. The two of them followed the guards into the palace. Shi Zhongjian looked around curiously and could not help but exclaim, "Isn't this too amazing? When we ascended the sacred mountain, there was nothing here. When we went to visit the Jinshan king, we were only delayed for an hour, and then a palace suddenly appeared here. The craftsmen of the earth spirit race were able to build a palace in an hour. This is unbelievable." The guards of the earth spirit race only smiled and nodded. They did not say anything, nor did they explain anything. After Ji Tianqing and Shi Zhongjian had chosen their rooms and entered their rooms to rest, the guards retreated from the palace and stood guard outside the door. Unknowingly, night fell. The night sky was as dark as ink, and the palace was silent. Shi Zhongjian was in his room, concentrating on healing his injuries. Ji Tianqing was also in his room, meditating and recuperating. He was silently thinking about how to find the broken sword in the sacred mountain. The two of them were so focused on cultivating that they did not notice the situation outside at all. At some point, the guards of the earth spirit race who were guarding outside the palace had quietly returned to the sacred mountain. Chapter 970. It was early in the morning. The night wind was cold, and the night was heavy. Ji Tianqing meditated in his room for a few hours. His true yuan and mental state had recovered to their peak. He ended his cultivation, opened his eyes, and silently recalled what had happened. Arrow, the Golden Mountain King, Ida, and many other earth spirits had made him feel the simplicity and friendliness of the earth spirit race. However, when he recalled the Golden Mountain King's expression and reaction when he arranged the accommodations for them, he felt that something was wrong. Before I told them that I wanted to find the divine sword, the Golden Mountain King and Ida were very warm and friendly. However, when the Golden Mountain King arranged the accommodations for us, his eyes were somewhat evasive. Ida also silently lowered his head. They seemed to have something on their minds, or something that they couldn't talk about. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing frowned and whispered, "Even if the Golden Mountain King is in some trouble and doesn't want to help me find the broken sword, I will search for it myself. I must find the broken sword." He subconsciously turned his head and looked out of the window, toward the divine mountain that was 1,000 meters to his right. However, the gloomy night sky was completely empty. There was nothing there. Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment. He hurriedly used his spirit sense to observe carefully. In the end, he found that he wasn't mistaken. There was nothing in the night sky 1,000 meters away. The towering divine mountain that originally stood there had actually disappeared without a trace. Strange. How could such a huge divine mountain disappear into thin air? Ji Tianqing muttered. He hurriedly got up and walked out of his room, arriving at the palace's gate. The wall of the gate was still lit by the dim stone lamps. However, the earth spirit guards who had been guarding both sides of the gate had disappeared. He released his spirit sense and covered the entire palace. He found that only he and Shi Zhongjian were in the palace. The guards were long gone. The divine mountain disappeared, and the earth spirit guards also ran away. Ha ha ha, I understand now. Ji Tianqing suddenly realized and guessed the reason. The corner of his mouth curved into a cold smile. I thought that the earth spirit race was simple and honest. I didn't expect them to be as cunning as the insect spirit race. They must have known about the divine sword. When they saw that I was looking for the divine sword, they carried the divine mountain and fled. He hurriedly used his spiritual sense to call out to Shi Zhongjian, "Lion, wake up. Something has happened." After Shi Zhongjian was awakened, he quickly ended his cultivation. He rushed out of the room like a gust of wind, and rushed to the entrance of the palace. He looked at Ji Tianqing blankly and asked, "Young Master Ji, what happened?" Ji Tianqing looked at the night sky with a solemn expression and said coldly, "We have been deceived by the Jinshan King. He arranged for us to stay here and escaped with the sacred mountain in the middle of the night." Shi Zhongjian was stunned for a moment. He looked around and found that the guards were gone, and so was the divine mountain. His eyes widened as he exclaimed in disbelief, "How could this be? They actually moved away such a huge divine mountain without a sound. Even we didn't notice it. He. This is the uniqueness of the earth spirit race. They have a unique ability." Ji Tianqing sneered and said in a serious tone, "Don't just stand there. They just ran away not long ago, they can't have gone far. Let's chase after them." "Chase? How do we chase after them?" Shi Zhongjian frowned and pointed at the location of the divine mountain. He said, "Look over there. The divine mountain has been moved away. There isn't even a trace of it left on the ground." Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment, then he smiled confidently. The earth spirit race was able to move the divine mountain without anyone noticing. Other than using the power of the divine mountain, they also borrowed the power of the earth. I can detect the fluctuations of the power of the earth, and I have already found the traces they left behind. They fled to the southwest. Let's chase after them. We will catch up to them soon. After saying that, he condensed a pair of wings with his Kenshin battle robe and turned into a golden stream of light, flying to the southwest. Amazing! Shi Zhongjian was stunned for a moment before he came back to his senses. He hurriedly flew into the night sky and followed Ji Tianqing to the southwest. The two of them flew through the night sky one after the other. They were like two golden streams of light cutting through the night sky. Their speed was unbelievably fast. About 4 hours later, the two of them had flown over 4,000 kilometers. It was dawn, and the sky had already revealed a wisp of white, faintly discernible multicolored light. Shi Zhongjian followed closely behind Ji Tianqing and asked in disbelief, young Master Ji, we have already chased after them for 4,000 kilometers, but we still haven't caught up to them. The Earth Spirit race is too miraculous, isn't it? How can they run so fast while carrying a 10,000-meter tall mountain? Ji Tianqing said with a calm expression, we will catch up to them soon. I can already sense that the residual power of the Earth is becoming stronger and stronger. Sure enough, after flying for another 100 breaths, he saw a 10,000-meter tall mountain in the mountain range in front of him. It was flying at an extremely fast speed. That black mountain was the divine mountain of the Earth Spirit clan. Its entire body was shining with a dark yellow light, and it was flying close to the ground and the mountains at an extremely fast speed. Ji Tianqing could clearly sense that the divine mountain was accumulating a vast amount of power. It had both the power of the divine sword and the power of a powerful formation. Wherever the divine mountain flew, the earth power in the mountains and the earth would gather crazily, forming invisible hurricanes that pushed the divine mountain forward. It was because of this that the 10,000-meter tall divine mountain could fly at such a fast speed. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing sped up and soon caught up to the divine mountain. Without saying anything, he released a giant golden sword that was 1,000 meters long and slashed it at the divine mountain. Metal Emperor Slash. Bang! The giant golden sword slashed at the divine mountain, shattering the dark yellow light barrier on the surface of the divine mountain. The terrifying power knocked the divine mountain down from the sky, and it crashed into the ground with a loud boom. A huge crater was created in the ground, and cracks spread out in all directions. The powerful impact force spread out, causing the surrounding mountains to collapse. The divine mountain was not damaged, but it was still standing on the ground. It would be difficult for it to fly again in a short period of time. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing's body flashed, and he landed on the top of the divine mountain, on a platform with a radius of more than 10 meters. He stood proudly on the top of the mountain, and he shouted in a dignified voice, Golden Mountain King. Come out and see me. Inside the divine mountain, thousands of Earth Spirit people were in an uproar. They were noisy and panicked. They tried their best to activate the divine mountain, and they wanted to fly away. However, Ji Tianqing used the power of the burial of heaven to suppress the divine mountain, and it stood firmly on the ground, unable to fly away. After a while, the Golden Mountain King and Queen Ida finally showed up. The two of them flew out of the divine mountain and landed in front of Ji Tianqing. They bowed with guilty faces and said, Young Master Ji, we're sorry. We're sorry. We lied to you, but we really can't help you find the divine sword. Ji Tianqing looked at them expressionlessly, and said in a calm voice, Fine, you don't have to help me find the divine sword, and I don't blame you. But why did you lie to me? Why did you sneak away in the middle of the night? The Golden Mountain King said with shame, Young Master Ji, to be honest, we Earth Spirits are kind and honest, and we hate lies and conspiracies. But Little Wang had no choice but to do so. This king knows that you must get the divine sword, but this divine mountain is our tribe's home, and I can't give it to you. Otherwise, more than 5,000 of our people will be homeless, and they will become refugees. They will also be slaughtered by the spiritual insects and become their slaves. Ji Tianqing frowned, and said in a deep voice, Golden Mountain King, you misunderstood. I only want that broken sword, not your divine mountain. Chapter 971. What? The divine sword is the divine mountain? Ji Tianqing was stunned. He couldn't believe it. He didn't expect it to be like this. At this moment, he finally understood why the Golden Mountain King wanted to escape with the divine mountain. Whoosh! Whoosh! Shi Zhongjian finally arrived. He landed on the top of the mountain and stood beside Ji Tianqing. Ai Luo also flew out of the divine mountain and walked to the Golden Mountain King and Ida. They also heard the Golden Mountain King's words. They couldn't believe it and exclaimed in surprise. A broken sword can actually transform into a towering mountain that is thousands of feet tall? That's amazing. Shi Zhongjian opened his eyes wide. He couldn't believe it. Ai Luo was also shocked. He murmured absent-mindedly, "No wonder we haven't left the divine mountain for thousands of years after we settled there." For a moment, everyone was silent. Everyone's mood was very complicated. They didn't know what to say. Ji Tianqing had been looking for the divine sword that fell thousands of years ago. He didn't care about any danger or his life. He had to get the divine sword no matter what. However, the broken remains of the divine sword had turned into a 10,000-meter tall mountain. The Earth Spirit clan lived in this mountain and worshipped it as the divine mountain. It was the place where they lived for generations. Once they lost the divine mountain, they would become homeless refugees. Just like thousands of years ago, they would hide in the underground cave and be bullied by the spiritual insects. They would even be enslaved by the spiritual insects and live a cruel and miserable life from then on. Ji Tianqing had to get the divine sword, but the Earth Spirit clan couldn't lose the divine mountain. This was an irreconcilable contradiction and conflict. If the two sides didn't know each other or were evil and warlike, it would be simple. The winner would be the king and the loser would be the bandit. The divine mountain would belong to whoever won. But that was not the case. Ji Tianqing was not a ruthless person who would do anything to achieve his goals. The Earth Spirit clan was not as cunning and cruel as the spiritual insects. They were simple, kind, and honest people. They didn't want to be enemies with Ji Tianqing, and they didn't want to hurt Ji Tianqing either. Therefore, they chose to sneak away under the cover of the night. Ji Tianqing didn't want to hurt the Earth Spirit race's people, so he couldn't take the godly mountain by force. Everyone was silent. The atmosphere on the mountain peak was very solemn. Ji Tianqing was the first to speak. He nodded slightly and said, "Jinshan King, thank you for telling me the truth. I can understand your difficulties. However, please forgive me for having a reason to obtain the divine sword." The Jinshan King also nodded and said in a solemn tone, "Young Master Ji, thank you for your understanding. This king also admires your character and chivalry. However, please forgive me for not being able to give you the sacred mountain. Even if this humble king does not wish to be your enemy, for the sake of the thousands of people of my clan, this humble king swears to protect the sacred mountain with his life." With that, he clenched his dark gold warhammer tightly and looked at Ji Tianqing with an unyielding gaze. His entire body exuded a powerful battle intent. The two of them didn't budge an inch. The atmosphere became very tense. Seeing that the two peak experts were about to fight, Shi Zhongjian and Ai Luo became very anxious. Shi Zhongjian waved his hand and tried to persuade them, "Jinshan King, young Master Ji, please calm down. Don't be impulsive. We can sit down and discuss this matter calmly. I'm sure we can find a suitable solution." Ai Luo also pulled on the Jinshan King's arm and begged with an aggrieved face, "Father, young Master Ji is my savior. If it wasn't for him, I would have died under the spiritual insects clan's poison. Father, are you going to attack our savior?" The Jinshan King shook his head and said sincerely, "Ai Luo, you're still young and haven't succeeded the throne. You don't understand the responsibility I bear. You're right. Father shouldn't attack our savior. This is a despicable act that our clan despises and despises. But Father has no choice. For our people, Father is willing to bear the infamy and become a despicable person who is despised by others." Ai Luo couldn't persuade his father. He was so anxious that he started to dance. His eyes were filled with tears and he almost cried. Ida quickly pulled him and lowered her head with a heavy heart. She comforted him with a soft voice. The situation fell into a stalemate again. Ji Tianqing was silent for a moment. Then, he said in a serious tone, Jin Shan King, although the divine sword has become a divine mountain and has been occupied by you for 1,000 years, I can still use it. I can forcibly take the divine mountain back with a single thought. But I don't want to do that. I don't want your people to be homeless and become slaves of the spiritual insects clan. I think we should have a good discussion and think of a way to get the best of both worlds. In fact, he wasn't exaggerating or trying to frighten people. The burial of heaven was the soul of the divine sword, and the divine mountain was the body of the divine sword. As long as Ji Tianqing made a move and borrowed the power of the burial of heaven, he could forcibly take back the divine mountain and swallow it into the Kenshin tomb. But he couldn't ignore the consequences. He also didn't want to bring disaster to the Earth Spirit clan. The Jin Shan King accepted his proposal and nodded, "All right, young Master Ji. As long as you can think of a way to get the best of both worlds and settle my people properly, this king will fulfill your wish." Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment. Then, he said in a deep voice, "Jin Shan King, do the Earth Spirit clan rely on land and mineral resources to survive?" "That's right." The Jin Shan King nodded. Ji Tianqing asked, "Then do you think that the mineral resources in the southern wasteland Great Lake are very abundant? Do you have to live in the southern wasteland Great Lake and refuse to leave this place?" The Jin Shan King showed a puzzled expression. He thought for a moment and said, "This king has never left the southern wasteland Great Lake. I don't know the situation outside the Great Lake. This king only knows that the mineral resources in the Great Lake aren't very abundant. Every 2 or 3 years we live in a place, we have to mine all the mineral resources within a radius of 10,000 miles. Then, we have to move to another place. Moreover, the Great Lake has our enemies, the spiritual insects clan, and countless powerful demons and giant beasts. The environment is very harsh and dangerous. Because of this, my clan needs the protection of the divine mountain. It will allow us to settle down and reproduce. If we can find a safe place with abundant land and mineral resources, it's not impossible for us to leave the southern wasteland Great Lake." Hearing the Jin Shan King's words, Ji Tianqing immediately showed an expression of relief. He smiled and asked, "Jin Shan King, is this true?" "It's true." The Jin Shan King nodded solemnly. Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "Good. Jin Shan King, please give the divine mountain to me. I will take you out of the southern wasteland Great Lake. I will arrange a peaceful and stable place for you, with abundant land and mineral resources." Chapter 972. After Ji Tianqing finished speaking, everyone was stunned. Shi Zhongjian was the first to react. He quickly nodded and said, "Good. Young Master Ji's idea is great. This is the best of both worlds." In fact, he did not know if Ji Tianqing's idea was feasible or not. He did not even know where the safe and peaceful place Ji Tianqing mentioned was. However, as long as Ji Tianqing mentioned the idea, he would support and agree. The Jin Shan King's family of 3 was silent. They frowned and pondered. Their eyes revealed hesitation. When Ji Tianqing saw the Jin Shan King's hesitation, he continued, "Jin Shan King, to tell you the truth, I am the Tianshan region lord appointed by the imperial court of the human race. I control a region. In addition, I am the prince of the imperial palace, the top martial holy land in the Tianxian land. In the imperial palace, I also have my own palace and territory. It is a cultivation holy land with abundant resources. As long as you give me the divine mountain, I will arrange everything for you. You will not have any worries. Whether you go to my fief, the Tianshan region, or the imperial palace, there will be no problem." The Jin Shan King frowned and murmured, "The domain lord appointed by the imperial court of the human race? The prince of the imperial palace?" He had never left the southern desolate swamp and had never come into contact with the outside world. Therefore, he didn't know what the words "domain lord" and "emperor's son" meant. However, he could tell that Ji Tianqing was definitely a genius with a noble status and outstanding talent. Even Shi Zhongjian, who looked simple, was not an ordinary person. The Jinshan king pondered for a long time. Then, he looked at Ji Tianqing seriously and said in a serious tone, "Young Master Ji, thank you very much for your good intentions. However, I cannot agree to this. No matter what choice we make, we will have to submit to you and become your people. We will be bound and controlled by you. We, the Earth Spirit clan, love peace and freedom. We will not submit to others easily. We will not become their vassals and slaves." Ji Tianqing quickly waved his hand and explained solemnly, "Jinshan king, you misunderstood. I will provide you with a peaceful and stable place for you to live and reproduce. I will do my best to take care of you, but I will never enslave or exploit you. I will treat you as my friends, not my people and slaves." The Jinshan king stared at Ji Yunshu with sparkling eyes and said in a serious tone, "Young Master Ji, can you promise to keep your word?" Ji Tianqing nodded, raised his hand towards the sky and said seriously, "I can swear to the heavens that I will never bully or enslave the Earth Spirit race. I will definitely see the Earth Spirit race as my friends." Seeing his solemn tone, the Jinshan king and Ida heaved a sigh of relief, as if a heavy stone had been lifted from their hearts. Ji Tianqing smiled kindly and asked, "Jinshan king, can you agree to my conditions now?" "No, this is not enough." The Jinshan king shook his head, clenched his dark golden hammer, and said in a serious tone, "In the great swamp of the southern wasteland, no matter what race you are, strength is everything. I am the strongest warrior of my clan. You have to defeat me and prove that you are strong enough. Only then can we believe that you are qualified to protect my clan." Shi Zhongjian thought that the two sides were about to reach an agreement. Hearing the Jinshan king's words, he was like a deflated balloon. He said helplessly, "Sigh, after all this, you two still want to fight? Jinshan king, you're being too unkind. You are older than young Master Ji, and you are a few levels higher than him. Do you still want to fight? You want to fight, so you want young Master Ji to back off, right?" Ai Luo was also nervous. He grabbed the Jinshan king's arm and begged, "Father, please don't fight with young Master Ji. You are a second-level soul-refining realm warrior, while young Master Ji is only at Sky Origin realm. Aren't you bullying him? This is not fair." The Jinshan king was also embarrassed, but he said to Ai Luo with a straight face, "Ai Luo, I have to decide the fate of thousands of people in my clan. I have to do this." After that, he looked at Ji Tianqing and said in a serious tone, "Young Master Ji, I am not bullying you, but I have the fate of my clan on my shoulders. I cannot afford to make any mistakes." Everyone felt that this was not fair, so they tried to persuade the Jinshan king. However, Ji Tianqing thought about it and nodded. He said in a serious tone, "Jinshan king, you are right. In the world of martial arts, strength is everything. Not only in the great swamp of the southern wasteland, but everywhere else is the same. Only the strong can gain respect and power. This is the universal law in the world of martial arts. I agree to fight with you. As long as I can defeat you, you will have to hand over the sacred mountain and leave the great swamp with me." The Jinshan king saw that Ji Yunshu had agreed, so he suddenly felt respect for Ji Yunshu. He cupped his hands and said, "Young Master Ji, you are indeed a top genius. You are very confident and courageous. However, I have to remind you that I have been cultivating for 80 years. I have reached the second level of the soul refining stage. Also, I have cultivated the 1,000 hammer refinement secret art. I am much more powerful than other cultivators in the same level. Are you sure you want to challenge me?" The Jinshan king's tone was very humble. He was very respectful and friendly to Ji Tianqing. However, his words revealed the dignity and confidence of a soul-refining stage cultivator. Shi Zhongjian, Ai Luo, and Queen Ida all had mixed feelings. They could guess the result of the fight. The result was obvious. Ji Tianqing was only at the 9th level of Sky Origin stage. How could he defeat the Jinshan King? A 9th level Sky Origin stage cultivator defeating a 2nd level Soul Refining stage cultivator? Such a thing had never happened in the history of martial arts. Unless Ji Tianqing could create a miracle, an unprecedented miracle. Everyone's eyes fell on Ji Tianqing. They all wanted to persuade him to give up. However, Ji Tianqing looked at the Jinshan King firmly. He nodded and said, "Jinshan King, maybe you don't know what the king's mansion means. You have never heard of my name, Ji Tianqing. However, I want to tell you that I, Ji Tianqing, am the synonym of miracles. Today is no exception. I will continue to create miracles. I will make you and the Earth Spirit Clan's people follow me and leave the great swamp of the southern wasteland." His words were full of confidence. It even seemed a little arrogant. However, his words and actions revealed the dignity of looking down on the common people. His unquestionable dominance was not disgusting. Even Shi Zhongjian, Queen Ida, and Ai Luo were shocked by his imposing manner. The three of them looked at him with expectation. They couldn't wait to see his performance. The Jinshan King also stopped smiling. His face became serious. He said in a serious tone, "Good. Young Master Ji's demeanor is indeed admirable. Since you are so confident, let's have a good fight." Chapter 973. Swoosh. Swoosh. Ji Tianqing and Jinshan King left the sacred mountain and flew up into the sky. The two of them arrived at the Sea of Clouds and stood 1,000 meters away from each other. They stared at each other with strong battle intent. Shi Zhongjian, Ida, and Ai Luo also flew into the Sea of Clouds and watched the battle from afar. After a while, Ji Tianqing and Jinshan King's aura had reached its peak. Their strength had also reached its peak. Jinshan King was the first to speak. He said in a serious tone, "Young Master Ji, you are a young man and a guest from afar. After you." Ji Tianqing did not beat around the bush. He cupped his fists and said, "Thank you, Jinshan King. If that's the case, I won't hold back. Take this. Golden slash." He formed a mysterious seal with his hands and released an endless amount of golden light. It formed a giant golden sword that was 100 meters long. It slashed toward Jinshan King with unstoppable power. The power of this slash had surpassed the ethereal origin stage and reached the level of a soul-refining stage cultivator. The giant sword tore the sky apart and released sword intent that covered an area of 10 miles. The air and clouds in the area immediately dissipated. Only the dazzling giant sword and the grim-faced Jinshan King were left in the world. Just in time. Jinshan King shouted in a heroic tone. He held the dark golden hammer with both hands and used his secret skill. Sky-shaking hammer. He raised the dark golden hammer with both hands and smashed it toward Golden Slash with all his strength. It was a simple move. There was no flashy light or scene. However, when the dark golden hammer was raised high, it formed a huge shadow of a hammer that was as large as a palace. It exploded with power that could crush everything and hit Golden Slash. Boom! Amidst a dull explosion, the Metal Emperor's slash crumbled on the spot, exploding into fragments that filled the air. Just like that, Ji Tianqing's sword technique was defeated by the Jinshan King. The shadow of the hammer did not lose its power. It smashed down from the sky to the ground and destroyed a mountain. The Jinshan King looked at Ji Tianqing in a dignified manner and shouted, "Young Master Ji, I'm about to make my move." Sky-shaking hammer. the Golden Mountain King let out a low roar. He held the dark golden hammer with both hands and smashed it towards Ji Tianqing from below. Immediately, the dark golden warhammer brought about a sky full of golden hammer shadows, drowning his figure like a torrential downpour. Ji Tianqing could feel that the hammer shadows in the sky were not illusions. They all contained the power to destroy heaven and earth. He didn't dare to underestimate his opponent and immediately folded his golden wings. Golden rock wings. Boom 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 boom. In the next moment, countless dark golden hammer shadows smashed into the pair of golden wings, producing a series of dull thuds. Ji Tianqing was immediately sent flying, tumbling 10 miles away. The Golden Mountain King took the opportunity to attack again. He swung his dark golden warhammer from the top right to the bottom left. Sky-shattering hammer. The dark golden warhammer exploded with a power that could destroy everything. Then, it condensed into a huge hammer shadow that was as big as a mountain. It fell from the sky and smashed towards Ji Tianqing. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing hurriedly took out the soul-reaping bell. He activated this magic treasure and smashed it toward Jinshan King. The soul-reaping bell instantly expanded thousands of times and became as big as a palace. It carried a black deathly chill as it struck the dark golden warhammer with a bang. The sound of the collision between the two magic treasures reverberated through the air for hundreds of kilometers, reverberating intensely in the sky. The soul-reaping bell trembled violently and made a series of buzzing sounds. It was knocked back. The dark golden hammer was also knocked back. The shadow of the hammer was also smashed. The two of them were evenly matched. Neither of them had the upper hand. However, Ji Tianqing took the initiative and attacked without hesitation. Thunder. He suddenly opened the third eye on his forehead and released an endless amount of lightning energy. It condensed into a blue lightning beam and blasted toward the Golden Mountain King. Jinshan King knew that he could not dodge the thunder light beam. He hurriedly activated his protective divine art to resist the power of the thunder. Jinshan Protective Shield. He channeled all the power he had accumulated throughout his life, and his entire body surged with a monstrous golden light that condensed into a gigantic shield. Kaboom! The thunder light beam hit the golden shield and shattered it. The Golden Mountain King was sent flying back. His grayish-brown skin was charred black like charcoal. He flew for 10 miles before he could stand firmly in the sky. Cough cough, he coughed violently, and black smoke rose from his body. He looked at Ji Tianqing in a sorry state and shouted, "Young Master Ji, I've underestimated you. I didn't expect you to be able to control the power of thunder. I'm going to go all out. Be careful." As soon as he finished speaking, he gripped the dark gold warhammer with both hands and charged towards Ji Tianqing. He leaped high into the air and smashed down with the warhammer. Sky Destroyer Hammer. Ji Tianqing wasn't careless either. He unleashed all of his potential without holding anything back and raised his left palm to slap out. Sky Burning Palm. Red fire gushed out of his palm and formed a giant flaming palm that blotted out the sky. He slammed it toward Jinshan King. In the next instant, the burning sky palm fiercely collided with the dark golden hammer shadow that was as large as a mountain, and a loud bang that shook the heavens exploded out. The dark golden hammer and the flaming palm collapsed at the same time. Red fire burst out and mixed with golden fragments, spreading in all directions. The terrifying shockwave swept through the area within a radius of dozens of miles, sweeping the sky clean. Not even a wisp of cloud was left. Fortunately, Shizhong, Ida, and Ai Luo were far away. They were only pushed back by the shockwave and were not injured. If the three of them were closer, they would be seriously injured even if they were not killed by the shockwave. Ji Tianqing and Jinshan King were pushed back dozens of miles. Neither of them had the upper hand. They were gasping for breath with pale faces. Blood was coming out from the corners of their mouths. Jin Shan King was not angry at all. Instead, he was excited. He patted his chest and laughed loudly, ha 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 ha. This is great. It has been a long time since I had such a good fight with someone. Lord Ji, you are only in the 9th level of Sky Origin stage, yet you have such terrifying fighting power. This is rare. I am from the Earth Spirit clan. I was born with iron skin. My defense is superb. Even a cultivator in the 3rd level of the soul refining stage can't hurt me. But you actually fought to a draw with Little King and even injured him. This is simply too inconceivable. Again. He rushed toward Ji Tianqing again. He held the dark golden hammer and smashed it down with all his strength. Earthly fire, 1000 hammer refinement. As he roared, dozens of lava pillars rose up from the ground. They violently shot up to the sky and blasted toward Ji Tianqing. The dark golden warhammer also burst forth with destructive power. It released thousands of dark golden warhammer shadows, which fell from the sky and smashed towards Ji Tianqing. Chapter 974. Without a doubt, the Jin Shan King was having a good time and had used his trump card. Shi Zhongjian, Yi De, and Ai Luo immediately revealed worried expressions when they saw the sky full of hammer shadows and lava pillars attacking Ji Tianqing from both sides. Be careful, young Master Ji. Royal Father, quickly stop. You and young Master Ji are just sparring. Why do you have to fight so hard? However, the Jin Shan King realized that things were not going well and regretted it. It was impossible for him to stop now. Everyone's hearts tightened as they were extremely worried. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing did not panic. He was as calm as usual. The more dangerous the situation was, the calmer he became. Pure Heart Dharma I. He activated the Pure Heart Demon Suppression Art and used the Pure Heart Dharma I. His eyes turned golden and mysterious. His eyes were fixed on the dark golden hammer shadow descending from the sky and the magma pillar surging from the ground. He immediately saw the Golden Mountain King's attack trajectory. At the same time, his body flashed and turned into a golden stream of light. He dashed toward the hammer shadows fearlessly. It was as if he had taken the initiative to meet the hammer shadows head-on, allowing them to bombard him. The Jin Shan King, his family, and Shi Zhongjian all widened their eyes in shock. Deep worry was written all over their faces. No. Young Master Ji, no. Calm down. However, just as the 4 of them were exclaiming in surprise, Ji Tianqing's figure was already drowned by the hammer shadows that filled the sky. Everyone was in despair. They could not help but close their eyes. They could not bear to see him being smashed into pieces by the dark golden hammers. However, the tragic scene that everyone expected did not happen. There was no dull sound of collision. On the contrary, they saw an unbelievable scene. Ji Tianqing's figure actually passed through the dark golden hammer shadows that filled the sky. He was as nimble as a ghost and unfathomable. Swoosh! 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 Within a breath, his body flashed more than 10 times. He passed through dozens of hammer shadows and arrived in front of the Jin Shan King. He successfully dodged all the hammer shadows and neutralized the Jin Shan King's attack in an unbelievable way. There was no doubt that this was the sword soul combat technique that he created himself. Everyone was dumbfounded. They stared at him with their mouths agape, unable to believe that this was real. At the same time, Ji Tianqing activated his sword heart and attacked the Jin Shan King. Sword of Judgment. The golden sword heart flew out of his body and turned into a 100-meter-long golden sword. It exploded with destructive power and struck the Golden Mountain King. Boom! Golden light splashed in all directions, and a loud noise shook the heavens. Before the Gold Mountain King realized what was going on, he was drowned by the golden sword light and was sent flying for over 10 miles. While he was still in midair, he opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. His face also turned ashen and dim. Fortunately, he had blocked most of the power with his dark gold warhammer. He had only suffered some internal injuries. If not for that, he would have been smashed into pieces by the sword of judgment. Shua! The Jinshan King drew an arc in the sky and fell to the ground powerlessly. At this time, Ji Tianqing had already retrieved the sword of judgment. His figure flashed as he chased after the Golden Mountain King. He waved his hand and struck out a giant golden palm, grabbing the Jinshan King in the palm. Shua! He pulled the Jinshan King back and saved him from falling to the ground. Cough cough. The Jinshan King coughed violently and spat out a mouthful of blood. He seemed to be in a sorry state and his aura was very weak. Shi Zhongjian, Yi De, and Ai Luo looked at this scene with their mouths agape. It took them a long time to recover. How could this be? How is this possible? Young Master Ji, one. Oh my God! How did he do it? The three of them looked at Ji Tianqing in disbelief and could not help but exclaim. Then, Ji Tianqing supported the severely injured Jinshan King and flew back to the three of them. Ida and Ai Luo quickly went up and supported the Jinshan King on both sides. They asked with concern, "Father, how are your injuries? Are you alright? Sai, you battle maniac. You can't stop once you start fighting." The Jinshan King waved his hand, indicating that the mother and son did not need to support him. He put away his dark golden war hammer and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with his sleeve. He cupped his hands at Ji Tianqing and said, "Young Master Ji, you are indeed a young hero. You are worthy of being called a top genius. You are so young and yet you have such extraordinary combat strength. I wonder how terrifying your strength will be when you reach the soul refining stage in the future. This humble king has lost without shame. This humble king is sincerely convinced." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said calmly, "Jinshan King, thank you for letting me win." After that, he took out a few healing elixirs from his interspatial ring and handed them to the Jinshan King. "Jinshan King, I apologize for offending you just now. Here are a few healing elixirs. Take them quickly." The Jinshan King shook his head and patted his chest. "Thank you for your kindness, young Master Ji. But this humble king does not need it. With this humble king's physique, this small injury will be healed in a few days." Since the Jinshan King did not want to accept the elixirs, Ji Tianqing did not force him. He put the elixirs back into his interspatial ring. The Jinshan King circulated his energy and adjusted his breathing for a while. Then, he said with a smile, "Young Master Ji, this humble king is sincerely convinced. The facts have proven that you are indeed qualified to win the respect of my clan and have the ability to protect my people. Later, this humble king will announce the news to my people and ask them to prepare to leave the sacred mountain one after another. After this humble king gives you the sacred mountain, my people will follow you out of the southern wasteland Great Lake. Young Master Ji, please prepare in advance and think about how to take my people out of here." After that, the Jinshan King took Ida and Ai Luo back to the sacred mountain and announced the news to the people of the Earth Spirit Clan. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought about how to take the Earth Spirit Clan out of the Great Lake. "After the Jinshan King gives me the sacred mountain, more than 5,000 people of the Earth Spirit Clan will have no home to return to. This place is very far from the southern wasteland city. It will take at least 10 days of flying to get there. How can I take them out of the southern wasteland Great Lake? The environment of the Great Lake is dangerous. There are countless demons and ferocious beasts, as well as the ferocious spiritual insects clan. If I take the Earth Spirit Clan's people on the road, the spiritual insects clan will definitely attack and obstruct us along the way after finding out the news. There is a space inside the seal of mountains and rivers that can accommodate people, but it can't accommodate more than 5,000 people. Just as he was worrying about this, the voice of the burial of heaven suddenly sounded in his mind. Tianqing, as long as they are willing to hand over the divine sword, I have a way to temporarily settle them down. Tianqing was immediately overjoyed. He hurriedly asked, Burial of heaven, what method do you have? The burial of heaven calmly said, you can settle them down in the Kenshin tomb. It won't be a problem for them to stay there for a year or so. As soon as Tianqing heard this, he rejected it without hesitation. No. Absolutely not. The Kenshin tomb is my biggest secret. Apart from you and me, no one else can know about it. Chapter 975. Refining the broken sword will take some effort. Tianqing furrowed his brows and asked doubtfully, Burial of heaven, do you mean to settle them in the divine sword? That's right. Burial of heaven said in a low voice, there is a small world inside the divine sword that can settle thousands of Earth Spirit Clan people. However, the divine sword is broken. I wonder if the small world inside the sword has collapsed. Tianqing nodded slightly and continued to ask, if the small world inside the divine sword is broken, can you repair it, Burial of heaven? I should be able to. However, I need to see how broken the divine sword is first, Burial of heaven answered seriously. All right. Tianqing nodded and said expectantly, then let's wait patiently. After the Earth Spirit Clan has moved out of the divine mountain, you can refine it. With that, he flew towards the divine mountain and landed on its peak. Shi Zhongjian was standing on the peak. When he saw Tianqing arrive, he smiled and said, Young Master Ji, the Golden Mountain King has already announced the news. He is discussing it with the elders in the palace. This news is a bit sudden for the Earth Spirit Clan people. They need some time. You have to wait patiently. Tianqing was mentally prepared. He nodded and said, it's fine. I believe the Golden Mountain King will take care of it. As expected, 2 hours later, the originally noisy palace hall gradually regained its silence. The elders who were agitated and opposed to the decision were finally persuaded by the Golden Mountain King and accepted the fact. Then, the elders and guards began to pass on the Golden Mountain King's order to evacuate the Earth Spirit Clan people from the Divine Mountain. Although the people didn't understand, they were extremely unwilling to leave their homes that they had lived in for many years. However, the Earth Spirit Clan people were simple and kind. They didn't dare to disagree with the orders and decisions of the tribe king. They packed their bags, took their belongings, and left their homes and homes. They left the Divine Mountain one after another. Tianqing set up a huge defensive formation in the forest below the Divine Mountain to protect the Earth Spirit Clan people. Within half a day, more than 5,000 Earth Spirit commoners had left the Divine Mountain and entered the defensive formation to rest and wait. By nightfall, everyone had left the Divine Mountain. The Jinshan King arrived at the peak of the mountain and reported the situation to Tianqing. Young Master Ji, all of our people have left the Divine Mountain. Please take back the Divine Mountain. Thank you, Jinshan King. Tianqing bowed to him to express his gratitude. Then, he stretched out his right palm and activated the black vortex in his palm. Shwa! The vortex flew out of his palm and turned into a huge black hole. It descended from the sky and enveloped the Divine Mountain. In the blink of an eye, the entire Divine Mountain was completely enveloped by the black hole. Although the sacred mountain was a broken sword, it still possessed a certain amount of power and spirituality. Sensing the call of the burial of heaven, Mount Sumeru passed through the black hole and flew into Kenshin's tomb. When Tianqing retrieved the mysterious black hole, the entire mountain had disappeared, leaving behind only a huge crater. Thousands of Earth Spirit clansmen watched the godly mountain disappear, their faces filled with reluctance. Tianqing didn't waste any time. After retrieving the divine mountain, he summoned the little black dragon and sat on its back. He silently channeled his energy, and his soul and consciousness entered the Kenshin's tomb. Shua. His soul condensed into a translucent person and arrived at the dark and cold wasteland. The scene in front of him was the same as before. The sky-piercing sword steel stood on the ground, and 9 tombstones stood on both sides. Apart from that, there was also the 1,000-foot-tall divine mountain that stood on the wasteland. Ji Tianqing looked up at the sky-piercing sword steel and calmly said, "Burial of heaven, begin as soon as possible." The burial of heaven didn't answer. The sky-piercing sword steel surged with spiritual light and released a powerful aura. Shua. In the blink of an eye, the sky-piercing sword steel disappeared into thin air and turned into a mysterious black light that flew toward the majestic divine mountain. That mysterious black light was the soul of the burial of heaven. It had been stored in the sky-piercing sword steel for so long. Now, it finally found the body of the divine sword and didn't need to rely on the sky-piercing sword steel. After the burial of heaven entered the divine mountain, it quickly merged with the divine mountain. Then, the divine mountain began to change. It quickly shrank. The rocks, soil, and plants on the surface of the divine mountain also quickly peeled off and dissipated. After a full 15 minutes, the towering divine mountain finally shrank to its limit. The divine mountain actually turned into a broken sword about half a meter long. It flew in front of Ji Tianqing and floated in the air. This was an ancient broken sword. Its shape was extremely simple and solemn, and it revealed a heavy and solemn aura. The sword hilt was mottled and covered in cracks and gaps. The divine inscriptions and diagrams that were originally engraved on it were damaged beyond recognition. The sword guard connected to the hilt was oval-shaped. It was unknown what material it was made of. It was as black as ink and as cold as ice. A circle of divine inscriptions was engraved on the sword guard. In the middle of it were 2 ancient characters. Burial of heaven. At the 2 ends of the sword guard were 2 roaring dragon heads. Unfortunately, the originally lifelike dragon heads were mostly damaged and covered in cracks. The sword guard was connected to the sword blade. The sword blade was pitch black and mottled. It was at least 2 inches wide. Although the sword blade was covered in cracks and gaps, it was still straight and upright. This was an imperial sword filled with the majesty of an emperor. It was neither as narrow as an ordinary sword, nor as wide and heavy as a heavy sword. Ji Tianqing could deeply feel that the divine sword burial of heaven contained a domineering aura that looked down on the 9 heavens and dominated the universe. If the divine weapons in the world were divided into different grades, the divine sword burial of heaven would definitely be the emperor of all swords. It was the absolute leader and emperor. Unfortunately, this divine sword was already broken. A few cracks appeared at the fracture and extended to the entire sword. The broken sword was severely damaged. It looked like it could not be used at all. It seemed like it would shatter if used with any force. The sword blade was only about a foot long. Together with the guard and hilt, it was only half a meter long. Rather than calling it a divine sword, it was more like a short sword. Moreover, it was a blunt weapon without a blade or a tip. Sigh. The damage is too severe. It's almost like scrap metal. It's already very lucky that it hasn't shattered yet. From within the broken sword came the sigh of burial of heaven. It was full of sorrow and complex emotions. Ji Tianqing understood its feelings. His expression was also very heavy. He slowly reached out his right hand and grasped the hilt of the broken sword. He said with a serious expression, "Burial of heaven, don't worry. I will do my best to help you reforge the sword. One day, the divine sword burial of heaven will be completely restored. It will regain its former majesty and domineering aura, causing the gods to fear it and the heavens to tremble." Burial of Heaven felt his determination. It also shouted in a dignified tone, "That's right. The day the broken sword is reforged is the day I return from Burial of Heaven." Chapter 976. Ji Tianqing and Burial of Heaven were both excited and full of expectations. Although it was very difficult to reforge the sword and there was still a long way to go, they were confident. They firmly believed that they would not have to wait too long for that day to come. After a while, Burial of Heaven calmed down and said with a voice full of vicissitudes, "Tianqing, the broken sword is too damaged and cannot be used for the time being. The sword's small world is also broken and cannot be inhabited. Don't you have 2 pieces of stellar divine gold? Give me those 2 pieces of stellar divine gold. I need 2 days to repair the sword and its small world." Ji Tianqing was startled and asked with surprise, "Burial of Heaven, didn't you say that I could only use the stellar divine gold to help you reforge the sword when I am strong enough? You can already use the stellar divine gold to repair the sword now? Do you need my help?" Burial of Heaven said with a bleak voice, "With my current strength, refining the stellar divine gold to repair the sword will definitely damage my vitality. I will need to sleep for a long time to recover. But I have no other choice. After I repair the sword and the small world, you can help the earth spirit race settle down. The broken sword can also recover some of its strength and help you in battle. Its power will definitely surpass ordinary magic treasures." Hearing it say so, Ji Tianqing nodded with a serious face and said, "Okay, then I will do as you say. After it is done, I will think of a way to help you recover your vitality." Then, his soul consciousness left Kenshin's tomb and returned to his body. The little black dragon quietly floated in the sky while he sat on its back. The Golden Mountain King, Ida, Ai Luo, and Shi Zhongjian surrounded him and looked at him with concern. Seeing him open his eyes, the Golden Mountain King quickly asked, "Young Master Ji, how is the situation? How are you going to settle my people and take them out of the southern wasteland Great Swamp?" Ji Tianqing slightly nodded and comforted him, "Don't worry, Golden Mountain King. I have already prepared. Please let everyone wait here patiently for 2 days. When the time comes, I will let everyone enter the small world of the sword. It will be absolutely safe there and no one will disturb you." When the Jin Shan King heard this, he heaved a sigh of relief and said, "That's great. Who would have thought that young Master Ji would have such means? There was even a small world inside the divine sword. In the past, our people lived on the divine mountain. Now that we want to live in the divine sword, we just moved in from the outside. We still haven't left the divine mountain. I want to tell the people this news. They will definitely be very happy." After that, the Jin Shan King bowed to Ji Tianqing and went to deliver the message. Ji Tianqing hurriedly took out the 2 pieces of star divine gold from his spatial ring and held them in his right hand. He activated the black hole in his right palm and swallowed the 2 pieces of stellar divine gold into Kenshin's tomb. Burial of Heaven hurriedly activated the power of the broken sword, turning it into a mass of pitch-black divine light that enveloped the 2 pieces of star divine gold. The pitch-black ball of light floated above the wasteland. Borrowing the power of Kenshin's tomb, it continued to refine the stellar divine gold and fuse it into the broken sword. This process was very slow. Not only did it consume a lot of power, but it also took a long time. Ji Tianqing, the Jin Shan King, and the others waited patiently. Unknowingly, 2 days had passed. In these 2 days, the Jin Shan King and the elders of the Earth Spirit Clan were very worried. They were afraid that the Spiritual Insects Clan would take the opportunity to invade. After all, the Spiritual Insects Clan controlled countless insects and forests. They were very well informed. The Golden Mountain King and the elders were all on tenterhooks. They had been vigilant all this time. However, 2 days had passed and everything was calm. The Spiritual Insects Clan seemed to know nothing about this. Only Ji Tianqing knew that the spiritual insects clan had lost so many guards and elders. They would not dare to invade again in a short period of time. On the morning of the third day, the burial of heaven finally completely refined the 2 pieces of star divine gold and fused them into the broken sword. It had almost exhausted all of its power and finally repaired most of the cracks and gaps in the broken sword. The most important thing was that it had completely restored the broken small world of the sword. After doing all this, the burial of heaven flew out of the Kenshin tomb and appeared in the sky through the black hole in Ji Tianqing's right palm. Whoosh! The broken sword flew in front of Ji Tianqing and quietly floated. Ji Tianqing held the broken sword with both hands and looked at it with satisfaction. He saw that the broken sword, which was originally mottled and dim, had finally recovered some of its luster. The broken sword hilt, sword guard, and blade full of cracks had all been repaired. The cracks and gaps had disappeared. The blade was still dark and cold. The sword guard and ancient hilt faintly showed a trace of dark gold. Ji Tianqing could clearly feel that the broken sword's power had more than doubled after being repaired by the star divine gold. Most importantly, the broken sword had become indestructible and no longer looked like it would shatter with a touch. He held the hilt in his hand and felt the existence of the burial of heaven. This broken sword was as heavy as a mountain and contained the power to cut through heaven and earth. There was also an invisible soul connection between him and the broken sword, as if this broken sword was a part of his body. With a thought, he could control this broken sword as if it was his own arm without any hesitation. Tianqing, put the earth spirit into the small world of the sword. The burial of heaven's voice sounded in Ji Tianqing's mind. Its tone was low, and its voice was very weak and tired. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and sent his consciousness into the broken sword. He immediately saw the divine artifact space inside the divine sword, which was the small world of the sword that the burial of heaven had mentioned. The seal of mountains and river space was only a few dozen meters wide, like a spacious secret room. The divine artifact space inside the divine sword was 1,000 kilometers wide, like a small world. In that small world, there was a blue sky, green grassland, continuous mountain ranges, lakes, and rivers. High up in the sky, there was a dim sun that never set, emitting a faint golden light. Under the ground, there were rich mineral veins, enough for the earth spirit to survive for 3 to 5 months. So this is the small world of the sword. As expected of a divine sword, it's too amazing. Ji Tianqing was full of amazement and felt that it was inconceivable. The burial of heaven said in a low voice, "The broken sword hasn't been reforged yet, and my power is too weak, so the small world of the sword is only this big. When I was at my peak, the small world of the sword was really like a world. It was as big as the southern continent, hundreds of millions of kilometers wide, and could hold hundreds of kingdoms and hundreds of billions of lives. It's so terrifying." Ji Tianqing felt even more incredulous and couldn't help but exclaim. At the same time, he was looking forward to when he could reforge the divine sword and restore the burial of heaven to its peak. When that time came, the world of the sword could hold hundreds of billions of lives. Wouldn't it be his personal world? He would be the ruler of the world of the sword. After a while, Ji Tianqing put away his beautiful thoughts and began to settle the people of the earth spirit race. He released a vast amount of true essence and poured it into the broken sword. Swoosh! The broken sword instantly expanded 1,000 times, turning into a giant sword that was 100 meters tall and stood on the ground. The blade released a dazzling golden light that condensed into a huge door of light that connected to the small world of the sword. Chapter 977. In just 4 hours, more than 5,000 Earth Spirit people had all entered the small world of the sword. There were no other races in that strange world, nor were there any demons or giant beasts. Just as Ji Tianqing had said, that place was extremely safe. The Earth Spirit people could live and reproduce as much as they wanted, and would never be disturbed. Although the area of 1,000 miles was not too big, it was still a small world. To the Earth Spirit people, that was a world that completely belonged to them, and it was already very vast. Even if the resources in the small world were not enough, they would dry up in 3 to 5 months at most. However, Ji Tianqing had promised the Gold Mountain King that he would find a way to collect mineral resources and put them into the small world. Of course, he had provided the Earth Spirit people with a place to live, protected them, and provided them with mineral resources. This made the Gold Mountain King and the Earth Spirit people very grateful. The Gold Mountain King had also made up his mind that he would never let the Earth Spirit people be supported and become useless vassals. In the future, the Earth Spirit people would help Ji Tianqing wholeheartedly, and try their best to help him become stronger and build a powerful force for him. In this way, the Earth Spirit people became Ji Tianqing's warriors, craftsmen, and builders. After the 5,000 Earth Spirit people entered the small world, they chose a place with good feng shui to live in from now on. Arrow and the elders led many craftsmen and started to build the city. Thousands of people also used their talents to control the earth and rocks, and built countless houses and buildings. They worked together to build a home. After settling the Earth Spirit people, Ji Tianqing was finally relieved, and put the broken sword back into his body. He stood on the back of the little black dragon, looked at the dark night sky, and said to Shi Zhongjian beside him, "Lion, I've already achieved my goal in the southern wasteland Great Lake. I'm sorry, but I'm afraid I can't continue to accompany you to explore those forbidden areas and ruins. Next, I have to leave the southern wasteland Great Lake to do something very important." He had already planned that after getting the divine sword of the burial of heaven, he would rush to the northern wasteland and find a way to rescue Yunyao. Now that he had the broken sword, it was time for him to leave. Shi Zhongjian nodded and said with emotion, "Originally, this was my first time leaving the sect and seeing the outside world. Before I started my adventure, I had great ambitions. I imagined that after entering the great swamp of the southern wasteland, would be able to explore all kinds of legendary ancient realms and dangerous lands. I've even set 3 targets, and I'm determined to explore them. Those 3 targets are all incomparably dangerous forbidden areas." Speaking of this, Shi Zhongjian laughed self-deprecatingly and shook his head gently. "However, I thought of everything too simply, so I paid the price of being covered in bruises. Young Master Ji, I'm very lucky to have met you. With your help and care, I was able to survive the danger and survive until now. Also, thank you for letting me know about the dangers of the outside world and the unfathomable nature of the human heart. To me, this is a valuable life experience. Although we didn't spend much time together, only a few days, I'll always remember these days. I'll always remember you and Sister Ji Ku." Hearing him say this, Ji Tianqing understood his meaning, and asked, "You don't plan to continue exploring the southern wasteland Great Swamp? You also want to go back?" Shi Zhongjian nodded, and said with a smile, "Yes, with my experience, and strength, it's not enough for me to explore the southern wasteland Great Swamp for the time being. We're only at the edge of the Great Swamp, and we've already encountered so many life and death dangers. If I continue to explore deeper, I'll definitely lose my life here. Therefore, I also want to leave the Great Swamp, and return to the sect to recuperate. After I've recovered, I'll take my master and the elders to the southern wasteland Great Swamp again, and go to the evil dragon pool to find that azure dragon." Ji Tianqing had already guessed that he would do this, so he patted his shoulder with a smile. "Good, I wish you all the best, and that you'll find that azure dragon soon." After that, Ji Tianqing rode the little black dragon, and took Shi Zhongjian to the night sky, and returned to the southern wasteland city. Time passed quickly. One day later, good news came from Jian Xiaotian's small world. More than 5,000 Earth Spirit people, in just one day, built a solemn and imposing city with a radius of 20 miles. Ji Tianqing witnessed the Earth Spirit people's talent in construction, and his heart was filled with shock and disbelief. The Golden Mountain King wanted to name the city, so he asked for Chu Li's opinion. Ji Tianqing replied without hesitation that the new city would be called Peaceful Earth City, which meant that the Earth Spirit people would live and work in peace and contentment. The Golden Mountain King gladly accepted this name, and personally carved the 3 words Peaceful Earth City on the city gate. After that, the Earth Spirit people settled down in Peaceful Earth City, and began their normal lives and cultivation. Ji Tianqing and Shi Zhongjian also hurried back to the southern wasteland city as fast as lightning. The journey was very peaceful, and they didn't encounter any more dangers. On the evening of the 8th day, the little black dragon carried them out of the southern wasteland Great Swamp, and returned to the outskirts of the southern wasteland city. Under the setting sun, the little black dragon stopped in the sky. Ji Tianqing and Shi Zhongjian stood on the little black dragon's back, facing each other, and were about to part ways here. Lion, after you go back, take care of your injuries, and be more vigilant in the future. Don't be silly anymore. We will part here today, take care of yourself. Ji Tianqing cupped his hands, and bid farewell to Shi Zhongjian. Shi Zhongjian also cupped his hands, and said with a smile, Young Master Ji, you and little sister Ji Ku must also take care of yourselves. The mountains are high, and the rivers are far away. If fate wills it, we will meet again in the martial world. After that, he waved his hand at Ji Tianqing, turned around, and flew towards the southern wasteland city, laughing heartily as he left. Ji Tianqing stood on the little black dragon's back, and looked at his departing figure with a faint smile on his face. Hee, what an interesting guy. If fate wills it, perhaps we will meet again. The little black dragon nodded, and asked, Old Ji, where are we going next? Back to the central continent? Before Ji Tianqing could answer, the voice of the burial of heaven entered their minds. No, there is no meaning in going back to the central continent now. Going to the northern wasteland is the same as going to death. Tianqing, go to the eastern sea water tribe. Ji Tianqing was startled, and asked in confusion, Burial of heaven, we have no dealings with the eastern sea water tribe, what are we going there for? The burial of heaven explained in a serious tone, you have not reached the spirit refining realm, so you cannot enter the northern desert. Although the broken sword has been repaired, it is still not very powerful, and is only equivalent to a mid-grade soul-level magic treasure. You have to go to the eastern sea water tribe to find the 2 materials, boundless stone and illusory feather ice gold. Only by further repairing the broken sword can you help me recover my vitality, and make the broken sword even more powerful. When the time comes, you can even borrow the power of the broken sword to break through the shackles of the spirit refining realm, and reach the spirit refining realm as soon as possible. After hearing the burial of heaven's explanation, Ji Tianqing finally understood the pros and cons, and immediately nodded with a serious expression, I see, I understand. Chapter 978. Ji Tianqing only had 2 goals. To increase his strength and reach the soul refining realm as soon as possible, then go to the northern desert to rescue Yunyao. He was now at the 9th layer of the sky origin stage. It would be very difficult for him to reach the soul refining realm. That was the gap between ordinary cultivators and transcendent cultivators. It was an insurmountable gap, an almost unbreakable shackle. However, Burial of Heaven told him that as long as he went to the Eastern Seas Water Tribe to find the boundless stone and illusory feather ice gold, he could repair the broken sword and strengthen it. Most importantly, he could borrow the power of the broken sword to break through the shackles of the soul refining realm. Therefore, Ji Tianqing listened to Burial of Heaven's advice and decided to go to the Eastern Sea. The little black dragon did not enter the southern desolate city. He turned around and flew to the east. The distance from the southern desolate city to the Eastern Sea was very far. Even with the little black dragon's strength and speed, it would still take 2 months. Although it was a long journey and Ji Tianqing was unfamiliar with the Eastern Sea. Since he had made a decision, he would not back down or hesitate. On the way, he used his spiritual sense to chat with the little black dragon. He asked, "Little black dragon, do you remember the first time I met you? It was in our Ji clan's Yanqing Lake." The little black dragon nodded slightly and said in a low voice, "Of course I remember. At that time, we had an agreement. You will help me find the dragon crystal and send me back to the Eastern Sea." Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a smile, "Yes. It has only been 2 years. I didn't expect to be able to fulfill my promise so soon. I have already found the dragon crystal for you. This time, I will send you back to the Eastern Sea." The little black dragon was silent for a moment, then asked tentatively, "Old Ji, do you really want me to leave you?" Ji Tianqing shook his head and smiled. "If you want to stay by my side, of course I won't let you leave. However, if you want to go back to the Eastern Sea and reunite with your clansmen and loved ones, I will not stop you." The little black dragon fell silent for a moment before saying in a rather heavy voice, "But I'm extremely unfamiliar with the Eastern Sea. I don't have any memories of the Eastern Sea." Ji Tianqing recalled for a moment before he chuckled and said, "When I was in the Shenhui sect, I read the books in the study. One of the books recorded what happened back then. When the Shenhui sect obtained you, you were still a dragon egg. It was the experts of the Shenhui sect who spent a lot of effort to hatch you. You were born in the spirit beast garden of the Shenhui sect. How could you have any memories of the East Sea? So that's how it is." The little black dragon finally understood. Ji Tianqing asked it again, "Can you find your people, parents, and relatives? If I get close to them, will I be able to sense their bloodline?" The little black dragon thought seriously for a while before shaking his head and helplessly saying, "I also don't know where to go to find my parents and clansmen. Speaking of which, we've encountered quite a few flood dragons in the past 2 years, but none of them were black dragons. I also don't have any bloodline connection with them." Ji Tianqing thought for a moment, then analyzed, "I've done some research in the past. Among the dragon races of the East Sea, black dragons are truly the rarest. The most revered are the golden dragons, followed by the silver dragons, azure dragons, and black dragons. The most common dragons are the water dragons, fire dragons, and earth dragons. Little black dragon, you don't need to worry. Once we reach the East Sea, we'll find a place to ask around and find out. The water race reigns supreme over the dragon race, so it shouldn't be hard to find information about the dragon race." The little black dragon was finally reassured by his words of comfort and continued on its journey. Ji Tianqing no longer chatted with it. He sat on its back and began to meditate in silence. 2 months passed in the blink of an eye. The little black dragon left the southern continent and arrived at the easternmost part of the continent. The land came to an end here, connecting to an endless stretch of beach. The shore was covered in fine white sand. Wave after wave crashed against the shore tirelessly. To the humans and the water race, this was the border. The land was the territory of the humans while the sea was the territory of the East Sea's water race. There were many coastal cities and villages by the sea. Many humans lived in these cities, and the majority of them made a living by fishing and fishing for pearls. Of course, these fishermen could only move about in the shallow waters and did not dare to venture into the deep waters. The water race were naturally cold-blooded and arrogant. They rarely interacted with humans, and when they did, it was usually a conflict. Those who dared to venture into the deep waters were either extremely powerful experts or adventurers who were willing to risk their lives in search of treasures. If ordinary martial artists and commoners entered the deep waters, they would basically never return. When Ji Tianqing and the little black dragon reached the shore, they were in no hurry to enter the East Sea. He entered a coastal city called Blackstone City and temporarily stayed in an inn to rest and recuperate while gathering information. Blackstone City was an ancient city built from deep-sea reefs. This seaside city with a radius of 100 miles had a history of nearly 1,000 years. There were more than 800,000 people living in it. This city was the most prosperous main city on the East Sea border. Not only did it have the largest harbor in the East Sea, it also had the strongest warship fleet. The divine generals that the imperial court had stationed at the East Sea border were stationed in Blackstone City. 30 li outside the city was the main camp of the border soldiers. There were 50,000 elite soldiers there. For this reason, Blackstone City could be considered the safest city on the East Sea border. This place was extremely prosperous, and the commoners lived and worked in peace. Many adventurers who entered and exited the East Sea were happy to gather in Blackstone City to trade or gather information. Ji Tianqing and the Little Black Dragon had been traveling for 2 months and were mentally exhausted. The Little Black Dragon entered the 100 Treasures silk pouch to rest while Ji Tianqing stayed in an inn in the city, circulating his energy for an entire day and night. On the morning of the second day, he finished his cultivation and walked out of the inn. He had already asked the innkeeper and found out that the eastern district of Blackstone City was the most prosperous trade area. Not only were there countless shops that sold weapons and equipment related to martial artists, but there were also some factions that sold information. After Ji Tianqing arrived at the eastern district, he passed through several bustling streets and found an auction house. This auction house was called the East Treasure Pavilion. Not only did it sell all kinds of rare treasures, magic tools, and equipment, but it also sold confidential information. As soon as Ji Tianqing entered the main hall of the East Treasure Pavilion, a black-robed attendant came up to him with a smile. The attendant had sharp eyes. Seeing that he was handsome and had an extraordinary temperament, he guessed that this was an important guest. Therefore, the deacon respectfully bowed to him and asked, "Young master, what would you like to see?" Ji Tianqing did not beat around the bush and answered directly, "I would like to ask about some information regarding the East Sea Water Tribe." The deacon nodded thoughtfully and said, "Please follow me, young master." Chapter 979. The Dongbao Pavilion's auction was held once every half a month. Today was not the day of the auction yet, so the Dongbao Pavilion was quiet and deserted. There were a few customers in the hall on the first floor. The second floor was for VIPs. Other than Ji Tianqing, there were no other customers. The deacon led him to the second floor and entered a soundproof private room that was protected by a formation. After the two of them sat down, the deacon poured a cup of tea for Ji Tianqing and asked with a smile, "Young master, how should I address you?" Ji Tianqing nodded slightly, "My surname is Ji." "Oh, young master Ji." The deacon cupped his fists and asked, "Young master Ji, what kind of information do you want to know?" "As long as I can answer, I will tell you the truth." Ji Tianqing said without hesitation, "I have never been to the East Sea. Please tell me more about the East Sea." The deacon understood and said, "The East Sea is vast and boundless. Within 100 miles from the shore is the shallow sea. This is the area where we humans can move around. The fishermen of the Black Rock City can only move around this area. They do not dare to enter the deep sea. The Imperial Court and the Imperial Court of the Sea have an agreement to respect each other and not disturb each other. Without the Imperial Court's permission, we are not allowed to enter each other's territory. Otherwise, we will be responsible for our own lives." In the East Sea, there were countless fish beasts and demons, as well as an inexhaustible supply of mineral resources. The water race lived in the underwater world. They had built countless cities, and each city was surrounded by a great formation. Tens of thousands of Sea Tribe cities are under the jurisdiction of the Imperial Court of the Sea Tribe. The Imperial Court of the Sea Tribe is located in the 10,000 Dragon Strange Realm. It is said that it is a mysterious alternate space. It is like a small world hidden in the deepest part of the East Sea. However, ordinary people are not qualified to enter the 10,000 Dragon Strange Realm. They do not know what it is like inside. After listening to the deacon's explanation, Ji Tianqing had a rough understanding of the East Sea Tribe and the imperial court of the Sea Tribe. He continued to ask, "Have you heard of the boundless stone and illusory feather ice gold?" The black deacon was taken aback. He frowned in confusion. Boundless stone and illusory feather ice gold? They sound very unfamiliar, like two powerful magical treasures. No, these are two top-notch precious materials. Ji Tianqing shook his head. The black-robed deacon fell silent. After a moment of careful thought, a look of sudden realization appeared on his face. "I remember now. I have never heard of the boundless stone, but I have heard of the illusory feather ice gold. It is indeed a top-notch refining material. It was said that the illusory feather ice gold was produced in a forbidden area in the deepest part of the Eastern Sea and was extremely rare. The illusory feather ice gold contained unimaginable power and was a priceless treasure. Furthermore, the imperial court of the Aqua race even used the illusory feather ice gold to create an immortal soul-level magical treasure that could be called a divine artifact." Ji Tianqing saw that his words were reasonable and consistent with the theory of the burial of heaven, so he asked expectantly, "May I ask, how can I find the dreamy ice gold?" "You want the illusory feather ice gold?" The black deacon looked at him strangely. Ji Tianqing nodded. The black deacon hurriedly shook his head and said earnestly, "Young Master Ji, I advise you to give up on this idea. Legend has it that the illusory feather ice gold can only be produced once in 100 years. There are very few of them left in the world and they are all in the imperial court of the Aqua race. It is a priceless treasure of the Aqua race. Unless you can kill your way into the imperial court of the Aqua race and snatch it from their treasury, you can forget about it." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing was a little disappointed and his eyes dimmed. He frowned and thought for a moment before continuing, "Does the East Treasure Pavilion have a map of the Aqua race? Where is the 10,000 Dragon Strange Realm?" The black deacon was even more shocked and asked in disbelief, "Young Master Ji, you want a map of the Aqua race? Are you really going to the 10,000 Dragon Strange Realm and kill your way into the imperial court of the Aqua race?" Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, "You have misunderstood. That is impossible. I just want to enter the 10,000 Dragon Strange Realm and visit the imperial court of the Aqua race openly." The black deacon smiled bitterly and shook his head again, "Young Master Ji, you should give up on this idea. Ordinary people cannot enter the 10,000 Dragon Strange Realm. This has nothing to do with strength. You must have a very high status. For example, the messenger sent by the imperial court of the Aqua race, or the divine general of the Aqua race, oh right, the divine general of Donglin who is guarding the city is qualified to enter the 10,000 Dragon Strange Realm. Young Master Ji, if you really want to go to the imperial court of the Aqua race, you can go to the divine general's mansion in the West City and ask for his help. If you can ask for his help, you might be able to get what you want." Ji Tianqing nodded, "I see. Thank you for telling me." Then, he took out 200 spiritual stones from his infinite space ring and gave them to the black deacon as a reward. The black deacon thanked him with a smile and accepted the spiritual stones. Ji Tianqing cupped his fists at him and took his leave. After leaving the East Treasure Pavilion, he walked along the main street and headed to the Divine General's mansion in the West City. In the Black Rock City, there were only two mansions that were the most prestigious. The first was the Divine General's mansion and the second was the Mayor's mansion. The human race had 4 Divine Generals who guarded the Middle Continent and the other major borders. Each Divine General was a spirit refinement realm transcendent. Their status was second only to the 3 ancient clans. They were extremely prestigious figures. Ji Tianqing had already asked the black-robed deacon about the Divine General guarding the Eastern Sea. His real name was Xiaofan, and his title was Divine General Donglin. Divine General Xiaofan was originally from the Middle Continent. He was born in a family of generals. His ancestors were all fierce generals under the imperial court. 160 years ago, Xiaofan was given the title of Divine General of Donglin. Since then, he had been guarding the Black Rock City. He led dozens of generals who had great achievements in battle and 800,000 elite soldiers to guard the East Sea border. There were only 50,000 elite soldiers outside the Black Rock City. The other 100,000 soldiers were scattered in various cities along the coast. In the Black Rock City, Divine General of Donglin was extremely prestigious. He was the spiritual leader of all the people. The people and fishermen not only made many statues of Divine General of Donglin, but they also pasted his portrait on their doors and fishing boats. They worshipped him as their guardian. When Ji Tianqing learned of these matters, he was also very curious about Divine General Donglin. Speaking of which, I've only heard of the title of Divine General. I've never seen one in person. I wonder who this Divine General of Donglin is. Will he be willing to help me? Filled with anticipation, he entered the West City and arrived at the gate of the Divine General's mansion. The Divine General's mansion was located at the end of a wide street. It was more than 1,000 acres in size. It was very grand and luxurious. There were 6 guards in silver armor standing guard at the vermilion and gold-plated gate. Chapter 980. Ji Tianqing walked to the entrance of the Divine General's estate and looked up at the plaque on the lintel. On the red plaque, there were the words, Donglin Divine General's Estate. The words were flamboyant and majestic. The door was wide open and there was a large screen wall in front of him. On the screen wall, there was a picture of a dragon coming out of the sea. It was lifelike and majestic. At this time, a silver-armored guard wearing a red tasseled helmet came in front of Ji Tianqing with his hand on his saber. This tall and sturdy young man was the guard captain of the Divine General's estate. He saw that Ji Tianqing's appearance was extraordinary and dignified, so he didn't dare to scold him. He asked in a neither servile nor overbearing tone, "Young master, may I ask what brings you here?" Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, "I came to the Divine General's estate to see Divine General Donglin. May I ask if Divine General Donglin is in the estate?" The guard captain didn't answer his question and asked in a deep voice, "May I ask who you are? Why are you here to see the Divine General?" Ji Tianqing didn't change his expression and said in a dignified tone, "My surname is Tianqing. I'm here to see the Divine General. I have something important to ask." Ji Tianqing? The guard captain was stunned and his eyes widened. He stared at Ji Tianqing in disbelief. After a while, he came back to his senses. His eyes lit up and he asked in an excited tone, "You are the genius prince, the one who was appointed as the Tianshan region lord by the imperial court?" Seeing his reaction, Ji Tianqing was also surprised and asked back, "That's right. You know me?" The guard captain saw that he nodded and became even more excited. He said excitedly, "Young Master Ji, although I don't know you, I've heard of your great name for a long time. Since a year ago, I've heard all kinds of legends about you and I've admired you a lot. I didn't expect that I would be so lucky to meet you in the Black Rock City of the Eastern Sea. You're indeed worthy of being called the #1 genius of our clan. You're even more spirited than the rumors say. How admirable." Obviously, the captain of the guards had long heard of Ji Tianqing's name and deeds, and even admired and worshipped him. To be able to see Ji Tianqing with his own eyes, the guard captain simply couldn't believe it. He was so excited that his heartbeat sped up several times. Ji Tianqing was also a little surprised. He didn't expect that his reputation would not only spread throughout the central continent, but even the cities of the East Sea would know about him. He nodded to the guard captain and said, "If the Divine General is in the mansion, please inform him that Imperial Prince Ji Tianqing is here to see the Divine General." The guard captain was stunned for a moment. He quickly suppressed his excitement and said with a troubled expression, "Young Master Ji, to tell you the truth, the Divine General is indeed in the mansion." However, the Divine General can't see you now. Please go back and come back in a few days. Ji Tianqing immediately frowned and asked in confusion, why can't he see me? The guard captain hesitated for a moment before using his spiritual sense to explain, young Master Ji, this is a military secret of the Divine General's mansion. This subordinate can't reveal it. However, you're the #1 genius of our clan, and also the territory lord of the Tianshan region. You can be considered a colleague of the Divine General. Therefore, this subordinate will tell you this matter. However, you can't tell anyone else. Otherwise, this subordinate will be dealt with according to military law. Ji Tianqing nodded and patted his shoulder, saying, don't worry, I still understand this rule. The guard captain was flattered by the pat on the shoulder. He became a little emotional and quickly said, young Master Ji, the matter is like this. 1,000 miles south of the city, there is an ancient jade bay. This shallow sea area is rich in jade and icicle pearls. It's very rich in resources. The people and fishermen in the surrounding cities all year round catch fish and pick up pearls in the ancient jade bay. It has always been peaceful. However, since a month ago, reefs and whirlpools appeared out of nowhere in the ancient jade bay. There were also hurricanes and tsunamis. Many fishing boats capsized in the sea. Countless fishermen and people were buried in the sea. Even many villages and towns near the bay were destroyed by the tsunamis. Tens of thousands of people died in the disaster. Hundreds of thousands of people lost their homes. The people in the surrounding cities were in a state of panic. There were rumors that the ancient Jade Bay was occupied by sea demons. Some people even saw terrifying sea beasts as large as mountains. After the Divine General's mansion received the news, they specially sent a great general to lead a fleet of warships to the ancient Jade Bay to investigate the situation. However, all 20 warships were destroyed and 2,000 elite soldiers lost their lives in the sea. The great general escaped back to the Divine General's mansion with serious injuries and brought back a piece of news. Only then did everyone understand the situation in the ancient Jade Bay. It turned out that the rumors were true. There was indeed a powerful sea demon that occupied the ancient Jade Bay. That sea demon occupied the ancient Jade Island and gathered thousands of sea beasts under its command. It's very powerful. It's causing havoc in the ancient Jade Bay, wantonly plundering resources and crazily killing the fishermen and people. Ji Tianqing guessed the reason after hearing the captain's explanation. He said solemnly, I see. Sir Divine General must be anxious about this and will personally lead an army to exterminate that sea demon? The captain of the guards nodded. Indeed. 2 hours ago, the 20 Blackfin warships were assembled and are awaiting orders in the harbor. Now, Sir Divine General is ready to lead the fleet to the ancient Jade Bay and conquer the ancient Jade Island. Of course, he won't have time to meet you. He sighed and said worriedly, in the past half a month, this is the 3rd time Sir Divine General has gone to conquer the ancient Jade Bay. Unfortunately, that sea demon is very cunning and powerful. It also has many sea beasts protecting it. Even if Sir Divine General can defeat that sea demon, he can't capture or kill it. That sea demon manages to escape every time and then continues to cause havoc. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked in disbelief, Sir Divine General is a powerful soul cultivation realm expert. How can he not defeat that sea demon? Yes, that sea demon is also a soul cultivation realm expert. It's very difficult to deal with. The captain looked solemn and said angrily, the East Sea tribe is too despicable. They don't keep their promises. Our 2 clans have always minded our own business. Who would have thought that the sea demon would come to our territory to cause trouble and massacre our people? Sir Divine General is very angry and swore to eradicate that sea demon to protect the peace of the ancient Jade Bay. Ji Tianqing was silent. He thought for a while and made up his mind. He looked at the guard captain with a serious expression and said in a solemn tone, "Brother, please report to the divine general immediately. Tell him that the crown prince, Ji Tianqing, requests an audience. I'm willing to follow Sir Divine General to conquer the ancient Jade Bay and work with him to eradicate the sea demon." Young Master Ji, you want to help Sir Divine General? The captain was stunned and looked at him in disbelief. Chapter 981. Ji Tianqing's words caused the guard captain to not dare be negligent. He told Ji Tianqing to wait for a moment, then hurriedly entered the divine general's estate and quickly rushed to the main hall to report the news. Ji Tianqing waited outside the main door for 100 breaths of time before the guard captain rushed back and said with a smile, "Young Master Ji, Lord Divine General invites you in." He made a "please" gesture to Ji Tianqing and led Ji Tianqing through the main door and into the divine general's estate. Not long after, Ji Tianqing arrived at the divine general's estate's discussion hall and strode into the main hall. In the spacious and dignified main hall, the atmosphere was extremely heavy and solemn. On both sides of the main hall stood 20 soldiers in silver armor. These were the commanders in charge of the 1,000-strong army and possessed strength at the 7th or 8th level of the Origin Core stage. In the middle of the main hall stood 3 generals in golden armor, all of whom were at the Sky Origin stage. And on the main seat of the main hall sat a middle-aged man in a purple robe and a dark red cloak. This person was tall and sturdy with a dignified appearance. His eyes were bright and full of expression and flickered with a frightening dignified light. His entire body had an iron-blooded domineering aura that came from being on the battlefield for a long time. He was precisely the renowned Eastern Forest Divine General, Xiaofan. When Ji Tianqing walked into the main hall, Xiaofan, the 3 generals, and the 20 commanders all looked towards him in unison. Everyone revealed scrutinizing and sizing up gazes as they carefully observed him. Ji Tianqing walked to the middle of the hall and stood still under everyone's gaze. His bearing was extraordinary as he solemnly bowed to Xiaofan. "Heavenly Stellar Region Lord, Ji Tianqing, greets Lord Eastern Forest Divine General." Xiaofan's gaze was calm as he gazed at him. He lightly nodded and said in a solemn tone, "Young Master Ji, please dispense with the formalities. I've long heard of young Master Ji's great name, and today I'm fated to meet you. Young Master Ji is indeed a dragon amongst men, valiant and mighty. Lord Divine General is too kind." Ji Tianqing cupped his hands and bowed. After exchanging a few words of greeting, the two sides began to discuss business. Xiaofan's tone was solemn as he said, "Young Master Ji, a guard just reported that young Master Ji has come to visit this seat. He said that young Master Ji wishes to accompany this seat to the ancient Jade Bay to fight the sea demons. Is that correct?" Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said seriously, "That's right. I heard that the Guyu Bay has not been peaceful recently. Some evil sea monsters have been killing our people and fishermen. I'm the same as Lord Divine General. We're both officials appointed by the Imperial Court. Even though our positions are different, we are all loyal to the Imperial Court. We have to plead for the people and ensure their safety. Now that I've come to the East Sea, I can't just stand by and watch. I'll do my best to help the immortal general eradicate the sea monsters." His words could be said to be righteous and impassioned, causing the blood of all the officers present to boil and fill their hearts with admiration. Xiaofan also nodded slightly, revealing an expression of deep sympathy. Then, he said in a solemn tone, "That's right. Young Master Ji's words are exactly what I'm thinking. On behalf of the millions of people in the East Sea, I thank young Master Ji for your help." However, although Xiaofan said those words on the surface, he had other thoughts in his mind. He quietly transmitted his voice to Ji Tianqing and asked, "Young Master Ji, although this is the first time I've met you and I don't know much about you, I don't believe that you would come to the East Sea for no reason." "You wouldn't come to the East Sea for no reason," and you wouldn't come to visit me for no reason. You've come to find me today and are willing to help me eradicate the sea monsters. There must be something you need my help with, right? Let's not beat around the bush. Young Master Ji, what's your purpose? Why don't you tell me directly? Ji Tianqing's expression did not change. He secretly transmitted his voice to Xiaofan through his spiritual sense. Lord Divine General, you're indeed wise and far-sighted. That's right, I do have something I need your help with. I want to go to the East Sea's 10,000 Dragons strange realm and enter the Imperial Court of the Water Race. Please help me, Lord Divine General. Xiaofan raised his eyebrows and transmitted his voice. The 10,000 Dragons strange realm is a forbidden area for the water race. Only the emissary sent by the Imperial Court or myself can enter. Young Master Ji, if you want to enter the 10,000 Dragons strange realm, you can only ask me for help. But I want to know, why do you want to go to the Imperial Court of the water race? Ji Tianqing replied in a serious tone, I have something very important to do. I have to go to the Imperial Court of the Water Race to find out more information. Xiaofan nodded and did not ask any more questions. He looked at Ji Tianqing with sharp eyes and transmitted his voice to him in a playful tone, I can enter the 10,000 Dragons strange realm and bring you to the Imperial Court of the Water Race. But, I have no relationship with you. Why should I help you? Ji Tianqing replied expressionlessly, that's right. So, I have to help you eradicate the sea monsters and solve your biggest headache. Then, you have to help me enter the 10,000 Dragons strange realm. Huh. That's easy for you to say. That sea monster has reached the soul refining stage. Even I can't do anything about it. Xiaofan obviously did not believe him. He sneered, what makes you think that you can help me get rid of that sea monster? Where does your confidence come from? Ji Tianqing was not angry. He smiled confidently and said, Divine General, before I came to visit you, I have already asked around. I know how strong that sea monster is. I know that sea monster has the strength of a soul refining stage cultivator, but I still dare to help you. Naturally, I have the corresponding confidence. Also, after I help you eradicate the sea monster, you have to bring me to the Imperial Court of the Water Race. If we can't deal with that sea monster, you can pretend that I didn't say anything and you don't have to help me. What do you think, Divine General? Xiaofan looked at him silently. After a moment of consideration, he said in a low voice, all right. Since young Master Ji is so confident, I will agree. If you can really help me get rid of that sea monster, not only will I bring you to the Imperial Court of the Water Race, I will also do my best to help you fulfill your wish. It's a deal. Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. Xiaofan waved his dark red cloak and stood up. He said with a serious face, all right, then it's a deal. Young Master Ji, please follow me to the harbor. We will immediately depart for ancient Jade Bay. On the way to the bay, I will tell you the situation of ancient Jade Island. Ji Tianqing also knew that time was of the essence. He nodded and agreed. Let's go. Xiaofan waved his hand and led Ji Tianqing, the 3 generals, and the 20 commanders out of the meeting hall. They quickly walked out of the Divine General's estate and rushed to the harbor outside the city. When they arrived at the harbor, Ji Tianqing saw 20 warships lined up on the blue sea. Each warship was 100 meters long and made of pitch-black fine iron. It looked like a ferocious giant black shark, looking extremely valiant. Flags fluttered in the wind on the warships. Hundreds of elite soldiers in black armor stood solemnly. On both sides of the warships, powerful defensive formations were set up. Huge ballistas and spears were set up. 20 warships, 2,000 elite warriors, all of them were brimming with killing intent, their morale high. Chapter 982. Among the 20 warships, the most majestic one was Divine General Dong Lin's warship. Ji Tianqing followed Divine General Xiaofan, flew over the harbor and landed on the deck of the warship. The 3 generals and 20 commanders also boarded their own warships, commanding their soldiers to prepare for battle. Following Xiaofan's order, the fleet of warships raised their anchors and left the harbor, sailing towards the ancient Jade Bay in the south. Ji Tianqing and Xiaofan stood on the deck of the warship, facing the wind and gazing at the sea in front of them. The blue sea was extremely vast, as if it had no end. Layer after layer of white waves came roaring along with the strong wind, slapping the warships and their sails. Xiaofan explained in a low voice, "Within 100,000 miles around Black Stone City, there are over 100 cities and a few huge bays. Although the ancient Jade Bay is not the largest, it is the most fertile, producing all kinds of jade and icicle pearls. Spiritual stones, spiritual jades, and icicle pearls are all valuable cultivation resources, and they are the main source of income for the fishermen and common people. Ever since I've been guarding Black Stone City, the ancient Jade Bay has been peaceful for over 160 years. No aquatic creatures have ever come to disturb us. I don't know where that sea monster came from, but it has taken over the entire ancient Jade Bay, turning the sea area within a few thousand miles into its private territory. That sea monster is as huge as a mountain, and its magic power is very strong. It has thousands of sea monsters under its command, all of which can overturn rivers and seas. In the past month, that sea monster has destroyed at least thousands of fishing boats, and slaughtered tens of thousands of fishermen. It has also created a few tsunamis, hundreds of meters high waves rushing to the shore, destroying all the villages and towns within 100 miles. Ji Tianqing listened in silence. After listening, he asked with a serious expression, "Sir Divine General, can you tell me more about ancient Jade Island? How do you plan to eliminate that sea monster? Are you going to send warships and the army to besiege it, or are you going to land on the island and kill it?" Xiaofan frowned and said with a serious face, "That island is 100 miles wide, deep in the bay. There used to be over a dozen fishing villages on the island. However, the sea demons occupied the island and killed all the people on the island. It also crazily plundered the ancient Jade Bay's jade, pearls, and other resources and hoarded them on the island. It had set up a strange defensive formation on the island. It looked like it was going to stay on the island and turn it into its kingdom. Now, the island was shrouded in thick fog for dozens of miles, and the warships could not get close. The fog was highly toxic. Commanders and soldiers below Sky Origin stage would die soon once they touched the poisonous fog. Moreover, in the deep sea around the island, there are reefs and whirlpools everywhere. There are also many sea beasts guarding the island." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "Since that's the case, the battleships and army won't be able to reach the island. We can only rely on our experts to reach the island and kill the ocean devils." "That's right." Xiaofan nodded in agreement and said, "No matter how ferocious those sea beasts are, as long as the sea demon dies, they will flee in disarray. Young Master Ji, my plan is to have 20 commanders lead the fleet and surround the island to defend against the attacks of the sea beasts. I will go to the island myself, bring you and the 3 generals, and kill the ocean devils directly." Ji Tianqing thought for a while and nodded, "Okay, we will follow your plan." Xiaofan nodded and patted him on the shoulder, "There are reefs and whirlpools in front of us. That is the defense line deliberately made by the ocean devils. I am going to command the fleet now. You can go and prepare. When we reach the island, you will follow me to the island." After that, Xiaofan turned around and left the deck to give the order to command the fleet. Ji Tianqing stood on the deck and looked at the sea in front of him. As expected, he saw many huge whirlpools. There were at least 40 whirlpools in the sea within dozens of miles. The smallest whirlpool was as big as a house, while the largest whirlpool was hundreds of meters wide. It could easily swallow several battleships. Even the sea near the whirlpools had huge waves that were dozens of meters high, bursting with a strong suction force. He used his spiritual sense to explore the sea and saw that there were many reefs hidden under the sea. They were as sharp as thorns and blades. These 20 battleships would hit the reefs if they were not careful. If they were lucky, they would be stuck. If they were lucky, they would crash into the bottom of the ship and sink on the spot. He frowned and murmured with a serious expression, "The ocean devils set up a defense line here and made the island impregnable. It is obvious that they want to stay here and not leave." It seemed that the sea monster was very cunning. It was no wonder that Xiaofan had already attacked it twice, but it had ended in failure. "No, I have to think of another way to kill the ocean devil in one go." He frowned and thought for a while. He vaguely had an idea and a plan. He turned around and left the deck, entering a secret room in the cabin. He sent his spiritual sense into the broken sword and extended it to the peaceful Earth City in the sword's small world. He directly communicated with the Golden Mountain King. "Golden Mountain King, I need your help with something." In the peaceful Earth City, the Golden Mountain King was dealing with government affairs in the palace. Suddenly, he heard Ji Tianqing's voice. He was stunned for a moment, then quickly nodded and said, "Young Master Ji, what are your orders?" Ji Tianqing did not beat around the bush. He said directly, "I want to attack an island and kill a ocean devil that has harmed the people. This ocean devil has occupied the island. Not only did it set up an inescapable net, it also stored an incomparably rich amount of jade, pearls, and mineral resources on the island. In a moment, Divine General Dong Lin and I will attack the island. You will lead the experts of the Earth Spirit race and sneak into the island." He told the Golden Mountain King his idea and plan. After hearing it, the Golden Mountain King thought carefully for a moment and agreed. "All right. For us Earth Spirits, this is a piece of cake. Young Master Ji, don't worry. That ocean devil will die without a doubt. The treasures and resources it has stored on the island will all be ours." After receiving the Golden Mountain King's confirmation, Ji Tianqing was relieved. He smiled and said, "All right, then immediately gather the men and prepare." After saying that, he withdrew his spiritual sense and entered the Seal of Mountains and Rivers to check on Ji Ku's condition. Ji Ku had been injured and poisoned in the Rainbow Forest. After his treatment, Ji Ku had recuperated for half a month. His injuries and strength had completely recovered. In the 2 months since he had rushed from the great swamp of the southern wasteland to the eastern sea, Ji Ku had been cultivating in seclusion in the Seal of Mountains and Rivers. Now, her strength had increased again. She had reached the 3rd level of Sky Origin stage. Moreover, she had cultivated the secret arts that the Heavenly Net Monster Emperor had taught her. She had already mastered 2 of her ultimate moves. Her battle prowess had increased by several times. When she learned that Ji Tianqing was going to attack the ancient Jade Island and kill the Ocean Devil, she immediately volunteered to join the operation. Chapter 983. Under Xiaofan's command, the 20 battleships passed through the defense line without any mishap. They crossed the submerged reefs and whirlpools in the sea. The fleet continued to travel for 300 miles and arrived at the sea near the ancient Jade Island. Although this place was still 200 miles away from the ancient Jade Island, Ji Tianqing flew high in the sky and looked at the sea in front of him. He could already see the end of the sea. There was a large expanse of gray fog. Ji Ku flew next to him and also looked around. She said with a heart full of joy, "This is the endless Eastern Sea. Indeed, the sky is high and the sea is vast and boundless." It was a pity that such a beautiful bay had been taken over by the abominable sea demons. How charming would it be if this bay was as peaceful as it was in the past? Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a determined tone, "Don't worry, Cuckoo. Today, we will kill the sea demons and sea beasts and return peace to the ancient Jade Bay." As soon as his voice dropped, the soldiers on one of the battleships below cried out in surprise. "Stay alert! Sea beasts are attacking! The sea beasts are coming, everyone be careful! Prepare to attack!" Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku immediately looked down at the sea when they heard the cries of surprise. They saw that a few incomparably huge black shadows had appeared under the azure sea. Each of the black shadows had a radius of 10 meters and was half the size of the battleships. They cruised rapidly on the sea surface and approached the battleships. Although they could not see the appearance of those sea beasts clearly through the water, those black shadows were huge. However, judging from the huge shadows, those sea beasts were all very large. They looked like crocodiles that had been magnified 10 times. Indeed, the soldiers on the battleships were the elite soldiers under the command of the divine general. Although they were shocked and alert, they did not panic. Soon, they formed a formation and activated the ballista and long spear array on both sides of the ship. "Assault crossbow, fire!" One of the commanders waved his hand and gave the order with a booming voice. Instantly, the dozen of giant steel ballista on the ship shot out 5-meter-long, arm-thick steel bolts. Dozens of steel bolts pierced through the sky and emitted a cold light. Bang, 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 they blasted into the sea surface. Each crossbow bolt contained an incomparably powerful force, enough to destroy a house and pulverize a millstone. Apart from Sky Origin stage cultivators, no one could withstand such a heavy ballista. Even Yuan Dan stage cultivators would be injured by the bolts. Pang pang pang. Dozens of crossbow bolts flew into the sea and fiercely hit the huge shadow, causing a series of dull and loud noises. However, the huge shadow was only thwarted. After pausing for a moment, it rushed towards the warship even more crazily. Shwa! The huge black shadow quickly floated to the surface of the sea, stirring up huge waves that were 10 feet high, and crashed into one of the warships. Even though the commander of the warship sensed that something was wrong and tried his best to turn and evade the attack, he was still unable to do so. However, the speed of the warship was too slow. How could it avoid the attacks of the sea beasts? Boom! Amidst the deafening noise, the giant sea beast crashed into the warship, creating huge waves. The sea beast was blasted out of the sea surface and flew into the sky with blood gushing out of its head. It then fell towards the sea surface thousands of meters away. At that moment, Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku clearly saw that it was a Dragon King crocodile that was more than 40 meters long. It was completely black. The Dragon King crocodile had a trace of the flood dragon's bloodline. It was extremely strong and had a strong defense. Its huge head looked like a flood dragon's head and there was a horn on its forehead that looked like a rhinoceros horn. Although the Blackfin warship was made of steel, it was more than 100 meters long and weighed more than 200,000 pounds. However, the Dragon King crocodile still made a huge dent in the warship. The Dragon King crocodile's horn also tore a huge hole in the hull of the warship. The warship shook violently and fell to the surface of the sea, scattering countless pieces of steel. The Dragon King crocodile's horn was also broken. It was bleeding profusely and there were a few broken bones in its head. Ji Tianqing took the opportunity to attack. He waved his hand and released a golden sword light towards the Dragon King crocodile. Bang! The golden sword light that was more than 30 meters long hit the Dragon King crocodile and smashed its head into pieces. It exploded into a pile of meat paste and fell into the sea. At this moment, the entire warship was tilting and was about to fall into the sea. The bottom of the left side of the warship was out of the water. The right side of the warship was already flooded with seawater. Xiaofan and a few other generals were commanding the other warships to attack the other dozen sea beasts. They wanted to help this warship, but they couldn't leave for the time being. The soldiers on the warship were anxious and terrified. They quickly activated the array to slow down the speed of the warship's capsizing. However, they could only stall for time. they still couldn't prevent the warship from capsizing and sinking. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing attacked decisively. Black water rope. He shouted and waved his palms to form a mysterious seal. He used all his strength to perform the secret technique. As he waved his palms, black water vapor flew out from the sea within a 10-mile radius. It quickly condensed into a huge water column in the sky in front of him. In the blink of an eye, a 1,000-meter-long black water rope as thick as a water tank was formed. Ji Tianqing waved his hands and controlled the huge black water rope to entangle the body of the warship. He exerted his strength and used the black water rope to pull the tilting warship. He slowly pulled it back to the right position. Bang! The warship landed steadily on the sea with a muffled sound. The 100 elite soldiers on the warship looked up at Ji Tianqing in disbelief. Their eyes were full of shock. A moment later, when they came back to their senses, they all revealed smiles of having survived a calamity, and let out excited cheers. This is amazing! Who is this young powerhouse? How could he have such incredible skills? Oh my God, he pulled the warship back to the right position. Our warship weighs more than 100,000 kilograms. I've heard that this young master is the divine general's distinguished guest. He is Ji Tianqing, the son of the sovereign. When they heard the name Ji Tianqing, the soldiers on the warship were stunned. Then, they cheered even more excitedly. What? He is Ji Tianqing? The legendary #1 genius of the human race, the son of the sovereign, the Tianshan region lord, Ji Tianqing? This is incredible. I've only heard of his legendary deeds and fame. I never thought that I would be able to see him with my own eyes. Ha ha ha. Young Master Ji saved us personally. We are the luckiest. Damn it, I can die without regrets at sea today to see young Master Ji's glory with my own eyes. Yes. From today onwards, we are also people who have fought alongside young Master Ji. The cheers of countless soldiers spread far and wide across the sea. When the soldiers on the other warships heard the news, they were also very excited. Unfortunately, they were busy defending against the attacks of the sea beasts. Otherwise, they would also be cheering excitedly. Chapter 984. Xiaofan stared at Ji Tianqing, who was not far away, and praised him. As expected of the #1 prodigy in our clan. No wonder he's so confident and dares to help me conquer the sea demons. The other 3 generals were around the 5th or 6th level of the heavenly origin stage. After witnessing Ji Tianqing's powerful strength, the 3 of them were shocked and impressed. They were even more confident in this battle. However, now was not the time to talk. Xiaofan and the 3 generals took a deep look at Ji Tianqing, and then went back to killing the sea beasts. On the 20 battleships, 2,000 elite soldiers worked together to defend against the sea beasts' attacks. Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku also made their moves and killed the sea beasts one after another. The sea beasts were huge and had the strength of the 7th or 8th level of the origin core stage. They were like the overlords of the sea. The commoners and fishermen could not do anything to these sea beasts. Even the people and the ships were destroyed by the sea beasts. However, Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku were heavenly origin stage powerhouses. They easily killed the sea beasts. This battle lasted for half an hour before it ended. A total of over 30 sea beasts were killed, turning into pieces of flesh and blood that were scattered in the sea. The sea surface within a radius of 10 miles was dyed red. 2 of the battleships were severely damaged. They temporarily stopped on the sea as the craftsmen tried their best to repair them. The other few battleships were lightly damaged. It did not affect the battle. Out of the 2,000 elite soldiers, only a dozen of them were killed and a few dozen were injured. This little loss was not a big deal. Xiaofan ordered the fleet to continue advancing toward the ancient Jade Island. However, the 30 sea beasts were only the scouts of the ancient Jade Island. The commotion caused by the battle had already alerted the ancient Jade Island. Ji Tianqing flew in the sky and could clearly see the movements on the island. The sky was filled with thick fog that was rolling and spreading. Under the sea in all directions, densely packed huge black shadows appeared. They were rushing toward the fleet at an extremely fast speed. Seeing this, Xiaofan decisively gave the order, ordering the warships to get into a conical formation and jointly activate the defensive formation. Soon, the 20 battleships stopped on the sea and formed a battle formation. They formed a defensive formation with a radius of 10 miles to defend against the sea beasts' attacks. After a while, hundreds of sea beasts charged toward the fleet from all directions. They were not afraid of death. The 2,000 elite soldiers fired their crossbows and spears to attack the sea beasts under the sea. Xiaofan, Ji Tianqing, Ji Ku, the 3 generals, and the 20 commanders attacked the sea beasts. Xiaofan's strength was at the 5th level of the soul cultivation stage. He stood proudly in the sky, his scarlet cape fluttering in the wind. His entire body was bursting with a powerful battle intent and killing intent. Heavenly star explosion. He swung his palms and formed a mysterious hand seal. He manipulated his spiritual energy and unleashed a secret technique. Suddenly, dozens of basin-sized silver light balls flew out from his palms and blasted at the black shadows under the sea. Each silver ball of light contained a violent and terrifying power that could easily destroy a mountain. Those sea beasts were swimming rapidly under the sea and charging toward the battleships with all their might. Bam! 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 The silver light balls hit them one after another and a series of earth-shattering explosions erupted. At that moment, the silver light balls exploded one after another. They lit up with dazzling silver light that was as dazzling as the stars in the sky. Dozens of deep pits were formed on the surface of the sea. Huge waves that were hundreds of meters high splashed up. Dozens of sea beasts were instantly blasted into pieces. Blood splattered all over the sky and sprinkled on the sea. Xiaofan killed dozens of sea beasts in one move. Such terrifying strength and means made countless soldiers cheer excitedly. However, the number of sea beasts was too great. More and more sea beasts rushed over from all directions, vowing to destroy the battleship fleet. Most of the sea beasts were hiding under the sea. However, there were also many fan-like manta ray kings that leaped out of the sea and charged from the sky. The soldiers fought bravely while bathed in blood. They fought on the surface of the sea and their battle cries shook the sky. Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku were not to be outdone. They also used their secret techniques to attack the sea beasts. Shatter the mountains and rivers. Ji Tianqing's figure flashed like lightning. He released thousands of golden sword lights that shrouded the sea within a radius of 5 miles. There were more than 20 sea beasts in this area that were charging toward the fleet with all their might. Boom! 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 The thousands of golden sword lights exploded at the same time and shredded more than 20 sea beasts into pieces. A huge whirlpool also appeared on the surface of the sea. The dark red blood spread out along with the waves and soon dyed the surface of the sea red. In the sky above the sea 10 miles away from Ji Tianqing, Ji Ku was also fighting bravely. She held a silver sword and a red sword in each hand and stood majestically in the sky. She swung her swords and released silver sword lights that covered the sky and earth, sprinkling down on the sea below. Flying stars and setting moon. Hundreds of sharp and domineering silver sword lights fell like stars and blasted a few sea beasts under the sea. Those dragon monarch crocodiles and manta ray kings were instantly shredded into pieces by the sword lights. Moonblade Sky Strike. Ji Ku's body surged with dazzling silver light. She swung her dual swords again and slashed out dozens of willow leaf-like moonblades towards the 4 sea beasts. Bam! 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 The 4 sea beasts were shredded into pieces and sank into the sea after being hit by the moonblades. Ji Tianqing witnessed this scene with his own eyes and instantly revealed a gratified smile. He knew that the silver and red swords were soul-level magic treasures that the Heavenly Net Demon Emperor had chosen for Ji Ku. They were called the Crimson Moon Swords. The 2 sword techniques that Ji Ku used were also secret swordsmanship techniques that the Heavenly Net Demon Emperor had imparted to Ji Ku. That was why they were so powerful when Ji Ku had mastered them. It was not difficult to see that Ji Ku had indeed been working hard for the past year. Her strength had increased very quickly. This battle continued for a full hour, and it still did not end. The soldiers had continuously killed more than 500 sea beasts. Their blood dyed the sea red for dozens of miles. The formation of the warship fleet was still firm and the defensive formation was still indestructible. However, the number of sea beasts did not decrease but increased. More and more sea beasts rushed over from all directions and besieged the warship fleet. The blood that filled the sea did not make them afraid. Instead, it aroused their ferocity and made them fearless as they madly charged forward. Seeing this scene, Xiaofan pondered for a moment with a solemn expression. Then, he transmitted his voice to Ji Tianqing, "Young Master Ji, we can't waste any more time. There are at least thousands of sea beasts in ancient Jade Bay. We can't kill them all no matter what. The 3 generals and the warship fleet will stay here and resist the attack of the sea beasts. You will go to the island with me. We will kill the sea beasts as soon as possible and end the battle quickly." Obviously, Xiaofan had changed the battle plan at the last minute. Originally, he wanted to bring Ji Tianqing and the 3 generals to the island to join forces against the sea beasts. Now that the situation was critical, the 3 generals had to stay in the fleet. Otherwise, the fleet would be destroyed by the sea beasts sooner or later. Chapter 985. Xiaofan ordered the 3 generals to stay on the battleships and defend against the attacks of the sea beasts. Ji Tianqing also flew to Ji Ku's side and said, "Ku, I will go to the island with General Dong Lin to kill the sea beasts. Stay with the fleet and help the 3 generals to defend against the sea beasts. Be careful." Ji Ku understood that the sea beasts occupying the island had reached the soul-tempering realm. Even if she was worried about Ji Tianqing's safety, she could not go to the island with him. Not only would she not be able to help him, she might even drag him down. Therefore, she suppressed her worries and nodded solemnly. "Brother Tianqing, don't worry. I will wait here for your triumphant return. No matter what, you must protect yourself. Nothing must happen to you. Okay, wait for me. I will be back soon." Ji Tianqing nodded and turned to fly to Xiaofan. He and Xiaofan flew across the sky, crossed the blue sea, and went straight to the ancient Jade Island. Swoosh swoosh. The 2 of them turned into dazzling flowing lights and flew at an extremely fast speed. After 10 breaths, they had flown almost 100 miles and arrived at the edge of the ancient Jade Island. In front of them was an area covered by a thick fog that covered a radius of 300 miles. In the center of the fog was the ancient Jade Island, but it was covered by the fog and could not be seen at all. When Ji Tianqing and Xiaofan arrived at the edge of the fog, a large number of black shadows had gathered under the sea. They were all kinds of sea beasts. These sea beasts were all in the origin core realm. They could only stir up trouble in the sea and could not fly in the sky. Even if they looked up at Ji Tianqing and Xiaofan and swam angrily and anxiously, they could only spit out water pillars and huge waves to annoy the 2 of them. Xiaofan glanced at the sea beasts and a cold murderous intent flashed in his eyes. He waved his palms and released an invisible spiritual energy that covered a radius of 10 miles. Explode! He shouted and detonated his spiritual energy. Instantly, a silent spiritual energy fluctuation exploded within a radius of 10 miles and created huge waves. Hundreds of ferocious sea beasts had their souls shattered by him. After their bodies shook, they all sank to the bottom of the sea. Those sea beasts looked unharmed on the surface, but in reality, their souls had been shattered, and they were completely dead. There's no time to lose, let's go. Xiaofan effortlessly killed many sea beasts and flew into the thick fog with Ji Tianqing, flying towards the ancient Jade Island. The two of them flew in the thick fog, unable to see their surroundings clearly. They were also being corroded by the poison. However, Xiaofan's strength was high, and he had divine soul power protecting his body. The poison was unable to touch him at all. Ji Tianqing possessed the heaven-mending orb, which was equivalent to having an impenetrable physique. He could also ignore the corrosion of poison. The two of them passed through the thick fog at lightning speed and soon arrived above ancient Jade Island. The island was shrouded in poisonous fog, but the island itself was clear. There was no poisonous fog, only a defensive formation protecting it. Swish swish. The two of them landed on the west side of the island and landed on a huge reef by the sea. There was no beach on the west side of the island, only pitch black and rugged reefs. They had been washed by the waves for countless years and looked mottled with vicissitudes. Not far from the shore was a dense forest, full of towering ancient trees that were hundreds of meters tall. Xiaofan pointed at the forest and said with a serious face, "Young Master Ji, that forest is the edge of the island's defensive formation. If we want to enter the island, we must break that formation. The last 2 times I came to attack the sea demons, it took the initiative to fight me on the sea surface. Although I'm stronger than it and defeated it twice, it escaped back to the island, and I couldn't do anything to it." Ji Tianqing understood what he meant and said with a serious face, "If that's the case, then let's work together to break the island's defensive formation and kill it on the island." "Young Master Ji, that's a soul-level formation, you." Xiaofan turned to look at him with a puzzled expression. Ji Tianqing showed a confident smile and nodded, "Lord Divine General, maybe you don't know, but I'm a Grandmaster Array Master. As long as Lord Divine General helps me, we can definitely break the formation." After saying that, he flew to the forest and landed on the edge of the forest. He released his spirit sense to explore the forest, but it was immediately blocked by an invisible wall. The invisible wall was the island's defensive formation. Ji Tianqing used his pure heart Dharma eye and immediately saw a half-foot thick ocean blue light wall standing in the forest. The ocean blue light wall was very huge, like a curtain that covered the sky and covered the island with a radius of 100 miles. Even a soul-refining cultivator like Xiaofan couldn't break the island's defensive formation by force. Xiaofan knew the island's defensive formation's power, so when he saw Ji Tianqing carefully observing the formation, he silently stood beside him and waited expectantly. After about a quarter of an hour, Ji Tianqing finally understood the structure of the formation. He pondered for a long time before he thought of a way to break the formation. He said to Xiaofan, "Lord Divine General, I've seen through this island's defensive formation and found a way to break it. However, I need your help. In a while, I'll take the main Xian position, and you'll attack the Kun position. Advance 7 times, retreat 3 times, and turn 3 times, the Sun position. Your magic power must be majestic, and you can't be too impatient." Xiaofan was stunned and looked at him in disbelief. He revealed a surprised expression, "Young Master Ji, can you really break this island's defensive formation? This is a high-grade soul rank Grand Array. Only a Formation Dao Grandmaster, a powerhouse around the 7th level of the soul refinement realm, can crack it." Ji Tianqing didn't explain much and only nodded to him. He waved his hand and released a majestic amount of true essence into the island's defensive formation. Xiaofan saw that he began to break the formation, so he stopped thinking about it. He suppressed his shock and surprise and waved his hand to release a vast amount of magic power to help Ji Tianqing break the formation. Ji Tianqing's method of breaking the formation was very skillful. He waved his hand as fast as lightning and formed the formation seals, dazzling the eyes of others. No matter how shocked Xiaofan was, he had no choice but to believe him. He followed his instructions and meticulously broke the formation. Soon, half an hour passed. With Xiaofan's help, Ji Tianqing successfully broke the island's defensive formation and tore a gap in the azure sky. Although the gap was only the size of a palm and could only last for 10 breaths of time, it would automatically repair itself. But this was already a miracle, and it made Xiaofan happy and shocked. This is great. We've finally broken the island's defensive formation, and there's hope to kill the sea monsters. Young Master Ji, this seat joining forces with you to fight the sea monsters is definitely the wisest decision. Ji Tianqing revealed a smile and extended his hand to make a gesture of invitation. Lord Divine General, now is not the time to talk about this. It won't be too late to sit down and talk after we kill the sea monsters. The sea monsters must have received the news and made preparations. We have to hurry, so you go first. Xiaofan didn't waste any more time. His body turned into a stream of light, passed through the gap, and entered the formation. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.